any details.
Thank you, Jim. I should never presume that there is, I do remember reading that actually, and I should have called
Just
on.
didn't want the record to say that there were no other reports. So
Yes.
Yeah, and I would just add to what Jim said that the lighting for the proposed signage is ground mounted. So it's external illumination, ground mounted sign lighting.
Okay, so we'll make sure that the applicant addresses that question. And here on behalf of the Y, we have
Arnold Lakin.
Mr. Mueller, would you swear in Mr. Leckend, please?
Well, he's an attorney, so as I've indicated before, attorneys don't have to be sworn in because you could always trust them.
Thank you, Jerry. Good evening. My name is Arnold Lakin. I'm here on behalf of the Princeton YWCA. YMCA and YWCA are essentially separate entities. Mr. LaPlace essentially described the nature of our application. I'd like to spend a minute just giving a brief introduction of what it entails. We seek one bulk variance and a waiver of site plan approval. Section 17A 367B of the Princeton Ordinance allows a single sign of 16 square feet in total size. We're proposing the addition of a second sign, which will read the Burke Foundation Early Childhood Center. Our application, and you'll hear, is predicated on the fact that we believe we satisfy the C2 criteria, that the benefits exceed the detriments, because it's a positive impact to provide notice to the public of the charitable nature of our institution, the charitable nature of the services to be provided to by the funding from the Burke Foundation. The Y is a bit of an unusual building in that it's a corner lot with a long facade along Paul Robeson Place. So the sign will also add to visibility from Bayard Lane. But frankly, most important to us, it does facilitate a significant leadership grant to the YWCA in an economic client that is not that hospitable to charitable ventures, which will allow us to fulfill significant public purposes. I'll have two witnesses this evening, Julie Sullivan Crowley, who is an executive with the YWCA, and Robert Hillier, whose firm designed the sign. So with that introduction, I'm prepared to call my first witness, if I may.
Yeah, what we'll do is I'll swear both of them in at the same time. If both Ms. Sullivan Crowley and Mr. Hillier could raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give be the truth?
I'm not sure Mr. Hillier is with us.
He's here, yeah.
Yes, he is.
Oh, he is? Okay, sorry.
I saw him a minute ago, Dave.
Okay. I didn't let him in, so he must have gotten in the right way.
He needs to unmute to
I
say
let him in, David.
He's on mute.
Oh, boy. Bob, can you come off mute?
Unmute. Okay, yes, I will.
Okay. If you could, again, I'll repeat that. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I
Yes,
do.
it will.
So sworn or affirm, please each state your full name and spell your last name.
Julie Sullivan Crowley, SULLIVAN-CROWLEY.
Okay, Julie, will you tell the board what your position is with the YWCA?
Okay, Arnie, first, if Mr. Hillier could just state his full name and spell it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jerry, sorry.
Yep, it's J. period Robert Hillier, Hillier.
Okay, Jerry, am I okay to go?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Julie, will you tell the board what your position is with the YWCA?
Chief Operating Officer,
And how long have you been associated with the YWCA?
3.5 years
And when did you become the Chief Operating Officer?
today.
And we just briefly, and I know the board is familiar with the why, but briefly tell the board, in general terms, the mission of the YWCA.
Sure, the mission is to eliminate racism and empower women.
Now, the YWCA currently offers childhood learning services. Is that correct?
That's right,
And for how long has it been doing that?
for decades.
Now, would you identify for the board who the Burke Early Childhood Learning Center will be, what it will be?
Sure. Let me just preface this by saying, I don't know if everybody knows this, but YWCA Princeton just completed an extensive renovation of our building at the corner of Paul Robeson and Bayard Lane. And the renovation includes new windows and ceilings, lightings, bathrooms, and most importantly, a new HVAC system with superior ventilation filtration. And we all know how important that is right now. The renovation was made possible by a leadership gift from the Burke Foundation, who they work with nonprofits that foster the healthy development of children and families in New Jersey. Having the Burke Foundation name on the sign not only acknowledges their leadership gift, but it's also an important indicator of the outstanding quality of our program. We all know investing in childcare and early childhood education is one of the highest societal returns anybody can make. And childcare has always been an essential service to enable women, particularly women of color, to participate in the workforce and build economic security. And now the pandemic threatens to wipe out decades of progress, with more women stepping out of the workforce to care for their children. The fact that the YWCA, we are the YWCA, and in town, that's not clear to everybody. And we're offering early childhood education, and it's not widely known. Our community needs to know that we're here, and that sign will do that. Thank you.
And approximately how many enrollees do you anticipate in the Burke Childhood Early Learning Center?
We can go just above 100.
And what is the age range of the participants?
8 weeks to 6 years old.
And what's the nature of the service which the Childhood Learning Center will provide?
Both childcare, early education, and before and after care.
And did the Burke Foundation require certain naming rights in connection with the grant that they made?
Yes.
Okay. That's all the questions I have of this witness.
Thank you.
Should I proceed with Mr. Hillier? Or?
If there are, do any board members have questions of Ms. Sullivan Crowley? I don't see any. So yes, Mr. Lakin, please proceed with Mr. Hillier.
Okay, if I might, Mr. Hillier, I'm just going to move my screen around so I can see Bob, if you don't mind. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Hillier. I had some trouble getting in as well. Can you tell the board what your profession is, please?
I'm an architect and a planner licensed in New Jersey and 22 other states.
Okay. Do I need to qualify Mr. Hillier, or may I just proceed with the questioning?
Arnie, why don't you just really briefly go over his credentials and then offer.
Oh, sure. Mr. Hillier, will you tell us what your educational background is, please?
Yes, I have a master's degree from a BA and a master's degree from Princeton University.
Okay.
And I teach professional practice at Princeton University. And I have an honorary degree from NJIT, and the School of Architecture has recently been named after my wife and me.
And you're engaged in the practice of architecture, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And for how long have you been doing that?
For 56 years.
Okay. And you have an architectural firm within Mercer County, is that correct?
Yes, on 190 Witherspoon Street.
Okay. And you are also a licensed land planner, is that correct?
Yes.
Up to Mr. Hillier's qualifications. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Hillier, did your firm have a role in the preparation of the sign that's before the board this evening?
Yes, we are the architects for the entire renovation. And when the Burke gift came through, they asked us to design the sign for the building.
And when you refer to the entire renovation, is that the renovation that Julie was speaking about a few moments ago?
That's right. Yes.
Now, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Okay, Julie, would you, if you could, just post to the screen our Exhibit 1?
I'm not able to screen share.
Oh, okay.
Either Carrie or David or Mark, can you allow?
Harry already did it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Julie. This is Exhibit 1 to our application.
And Arnie, let's call it Exhibit A1, okay?
Okay, yep, thank you. Mr. Hillier, will you identify for the board what Exhibit A1 is, please?
Yes, it's an elevation of the building, of a part of the building. It goes off to the right a little bit further on the elevation that's facing the Robeson, Paul Robeson Street.
Okay. And does this elevation depict the current sign at the YWCA?
Yes, it has the YMCA, and it's, as Jim Purcell said, it's 15.8 square feet.
Okay. And does it depict as well the proposed sign for the Burke Foundation?
Yes, it does, at the far left.
Okay. And where's Bayard Lane in relationship to the building?
Bayard Lane is further to the left.
Okay. Now, would you describe to the board first the dimensions and the material of the sign that's proposed?
Okay, the sign is basically a white aluminum sign, and it has a total height, top of letter to bottom of the lower line of letters of 1 foot 5 inches, and its overall length is 11 foot 4 inches, and so it's exactly 16 square feet. I should point out that where you see the sign YWCA, that wall is 38 feet forward of the wall that we're proposing to put the sign on. And so that sign, which is closer to Bayard Lane, is set back. And the reason we've put it at this point on the building is that when you're in front of the YWCA sign, in front of that wing, you can still see the Burke sign further ahead. But more importantly, since the Y wants to get their message across that they have the child care center, this location will work for Bayard Lane also. And there's more traffic on Bayard Lane than there is on Robeson. And so we're by 3- or 4-fold increasing the exposure of the fact that the Y has this childhood center there and is ready to serve. Now, the sign is lit by a light fixture, which is known as a Kichler light, and it's only 4 3/4 inches high, so it's very low. And I have to compliment Mr. Purcell on picking up that we were only lighting 80% of the sign. And if you go down to the drawing below, the reason for that is that we had the light at 9 foot 6 inches away from the sign. And if we move it, and this would be a change from what we have shown on the drawing, if we change that 9 foot 6 to 15 feet, we will then be able to light the entire sign. And so we're proposing to do that. We're also proposing, concerning his point about the electric, that the electric line would be underground, and it would be in a conduit, and it would be installed by a licensed electrician, and it would be assigned with an electric building permit. So it would be done in a very workmanlike way and in the safest way possible, so nobody can get hurt by it.
Okay. Mr. Hillier, then you would satisfy both of the conditions and the staff comments, is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Hillier, I want to turn to a little bit of planning testimony. You testified that this sign will be visible from Bayard Lane, is that correct?
Yes.
And is that advantageous from the public's perspective to have a sign that would be visible from Bayard Lane?
I think it's, number one, they will know that there's a childhood center there. And number two, they will know that it's in the building, which they never knew before. It's, as Julie said, it's been there for decades. And people have been driving by that building for years and never knew that there was a child care center in there.
Do you anticipate any detriments associated with the erection of the sign?
None at all.
Now, you're familiar, are you not, with other charitable institutions within Princeton?
Yes, and we actually did some study in preparation for this. The library, which we designed, has 80 square feet of signage. What we're going to end up here with is a total of 31.87 square feet of signage on the building. The library has 80 square feet, which is 5 times the allowable 16 square feet. And the art center, which Michael Graves designed, has 50 square feet, which is basically in excess of 3 times what the code allows. And so we're asking, yes, to double the code, but we are still far below those other institutions. And incidentally, our footprint on the ground is larger than both the library and the Michael Graves Art Center.
And our building has facades that face 2 streets, is that correct?
That's right.
And does that enter into your thinking about the benefits of the sign?
It's by having the sign near the corner, it gets greater exposure. And yet, if you look at the entire elevation of the building, it's minuscule against the elevation of the whole building. Now, if you go up to, Julie, if you want to roll up this to the next drawing.
Before you speak about that, Jared,
Yeah.
I'll mark this as A2, if I might.
Yes, fine, Arnie. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, Bob.
Okay, this is a Photoshop, which we did showing the proposed sign and where the accent lighting would be, though, as I mentioned earlier, it would be 5 foot 6 inches further out, but still within the setback line. And I do want to point out that this is the sign on the left is a temporary sign to show that they're opening up the new center. And at the end of the day, that wall is just going to be plain brick.
Do you foresee any substantial detriment to the public good if this variance is approved?
None at all. I think what we're doing is we're showing that we have a public good, which people ought to know about.
And do you see any substantial impairment of the zone plan if this application is approved?
None at all.
Okay. I have no other questions of this witness.
Could I ask a couple? Mr. Hillier, what did you say the height of the letters was?
The total sign, Mr. Mueller, is 1 foot 5 inches.
1 foot 5 inches. Okay. And when you indicated that part of the building basically jutted out, I think you said 30 feet. Did that include
38 feet.
38 feet? Thank you very much. Did that include the section? I understood that just to be the section where the existing YWCA sign is. Is that correct?
That piece right there, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. I guess I should ask that we go back to gallery view and not do the, there we go, thank you. Are there other, before we hear from the public, are there other members of the board who have questions or comments about this? Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, I'm wondering when we see the rendering, moving that light fixture another 6 feet or so from the wall starts to get quite close to that nice evergreen tree. And I'm wondering if there's a way to run that conduit to prevent severing a lot of roots, maybe coming out to the side and then in radius.
Yeah, actually, David, I think we can avoid that tree. I can assure you of that. I don't think we need to get it near its roots at all, actually,
Okay.
because we'll be coming straight out from the building.
Thank you. That's a good thing to clarify. Are there any other questions from board members?
I have a question for Jim. Jim, what is, I know you didn't address the minor site plan issue, and the applicant has asked for a waiver of that. What's the staff's position on that?
We would recommend the waiver.
Okay, thank you.
Someone's told me on the chat that my audio is lousy, and I have been having trouble with it, so I apologize for that. Hopefully it'll come back and be clear at some point.
Sure.
Let's see, Mr. Cohen, let's see, I'm going to open up the public portion of the meeting. So if you are a member of the public and would like to comment on this application, please just click on the raise hand icon in at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Mr. Cohen, is anybody stepping up?
We do not have any raised hands at this point.
Okay. In that case, I will. Whoop.
Just had one.
Okay,
Philip Leon, I am going to bring him over as a panelist.
thank you.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Mr. Leon, if you could activate your camera, we would appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, I see your ceiling.
Here we go. Okay. I'll step in so you can see me.
Thank you, sir. Go right ahead.
We swear in
Okay.
members of, Mr.
Oh,
Lane,
excuse me.
we swear in members of the public, so I'm going to swear you in. If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, could you state your full name and spell your last name?
Philip Leon, spelled L-I-A-N.
Thank you. Okay,
Okay, my comment is, my wife and I live at 7 Hodge Road, which is on the corner of Hodge and Baird, directly across from the Y. And so anything they do on the building, we see all the time. I don't have an objection to the sign that's being installed, but we do have an objection to the canvas, the large canvas displays that have been on the side of the building on the front along Baird, and there's a second canvas sign further down along hooked to a fence, which is kind of half hanging off right now. And Mr. Hilliard mentioned that the first sign will be removed. We want to know that the second sign will be removed and that those walls will be clean and there won't be any type of advertising or display of these large signs in the future. Those are my comments.
Thank you for that. I would, I guess, invite the YWCA to respond to that, but I would note also for the board that these aren't items that are specific to the sign in question. And while it's an opportunity to talk to the Y about neighbor issues, I don't want us to get sidetracked from what's before us right here and now. So with that sort of awkward transition, I'll ask one of the representatives of the Y to react.
I don't think we had anticipated this question coming up. I know Mr. Hillier indicated that the sign, the temporary sign in the depicted along with the new sign would be removed. But what we would like to do is just have the opportunity to meet with Mr. Leon and get a better understanding of what he wants and see if we can accommodate him, because frankly, we weren't prepared for this.
That sounds fair. Thank you.
Okay. I'll just make one note. I noticed that the regulation says that one sign is allowed. You're doing this variance in order to put up a second sign but yet these displays, these large displays on the side of the building have been up for some period of time. And I would say they qualify as additional signs, which are not allowed by the regulation.
Well, as I said, we'll meet with him, and if we conclude that these signs are permanent and not allowed, they'll be removed.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Leon, I'll just, if you just send an email to Julie or to myself, and we'll sort out a way to meet.
Okay, sure, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cohen, are there other,
There are no other raised hands.
okay. So you can, I assume, move Mr. Leon back to attendee
It
status.
is done. It is done.
Okay, and I will close the portion of the meeting of this, for this application, where we hear from members of the public. Are there any other questions or comments from board members? And seeing none, would someone like to make a motion?
Louise, you want me to go over what the relief necessary is?
Thank you, Mr. Mahler.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's the variance for the second 16 square foot sign, waiver from site plan review, and 3 conditions. 2 of them are set forth on page 2 of the report from Jim and Derek, and I could read them if you want.
Please.
Did you say wait?
I said yes, please do.
Okay. The applicant, the first one actually is the applicant should address whether the 80% illumination was intentional, and the applicant did address that. So the condition with respect to that is moving the fixture back. Is it from 9 feet to 15 feet?
I think it's 16.
To 16 feet, okay. And the second is the diagram does not indicate how the ground-mounted floodlight will be powered. Underground electric must be properly installed and protected from accidental contact. So those are the 2 conditions.
And I think Mr. Hillier addressed both of those.
Yes, right.
Yep. So we do need a motion. Mr. Cohen?
I will move to approve the application as submitted.
Julie Capizoli, I second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to note for the record, and I want to apologize to the applicant. In my staff memo, I typed YMCA, even though I was thinking YW, so I apologize for that.
I think it's the song, Mike, you know.
I,
A brain word.
I'm well aware that there's a difference. The brain wasn't connected to the fingers. Sorry about that.
There's no offense. And thank you very much. And thank you for your patience with us this evening and getting into the meeting.
Well, thank you. And to Ms. Sullivan Crowley and all of you who have any connection with the YWCA, thank you for your good work.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I believe that the next two items on the agenda, which are both, they relate to Princeton University. The university would like to do the garage first and then the concept review second. That's a reverse of what we have on the agenda.
Okay.
Oh, jeez.
Do all of the, have all of the folks who are here on behalf of the university been placed into the meeting as participants?
I believe so. I think I see everybody.
Okay. This
Yes, and to
is an
turn the
application.
video on. Thank you.
Yes, please, for the East Campus Garage, please turn on your videos. If you're not speaking, you can continue to mute, but please put on your videos so we can see everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. This is from the trustees of Princeton University. an application related to the East Campus Garage for preliminary and final site plan with variance. This is at Faculty Road and Fitzrandolph Road, block 50.01, lot 18, file number 2020-854P. Mr. Muller, are the notices proper and we have jurisdiction?
The notice is proper, and I asked Carrie to confirm that proof of publication and service is proper as well.
That is correct.
The board therefore has jurisdiction, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr. DeGrazia, are you going to get us started? I understand you don't need to be sworn.
Madam Chair,
I
I'll
always
just,
tell the truth.
I'll
Oh,
kick it off.
excuse me. No, Mr. Laplace, I apologize.
That's all right. I was almost going to let you get away with it.
Okay,
I'm
Michael,
sorry. Thank you. Go right ahead.
if you could raise your right hand, do you swear to the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Okay, so sworn or affirmed.
Thank you. Members of the board, before you this evening is another component of what the university has been calling its East Campus development. As you recall, several months ago, we had a concept review of what the different components of the East Campus development projects process would be. And this is a major component. It's for a new 6-story, 6-level parking garage that will consolidate parking capacity in the East Campus. As the chair stated, it's on the corner of Faculty Road and Fitzrandolph. It's on a portion of the current parking lot 21, which is being rebuilt for new uses, including this parking deck. So basically, that's it. It's a component of the East Campus plan. And this is a site that's an interesting one because, as I said, it's consolidating most of the parking capacity for this part of the university, which currently is served by surface parking lots. It's now moving into a tiered structured garage, and it's about 2 blocks from Harrison Street and right off of Faculty Road. So that presents some interesting issues in terms of circulation and traffic. So I think I'll leave it there and let the applicant continue.
Before we do that, do we want to go over any comments or issues raised by other town professionals, engineers, or stormwater report or anything, or do we want to do that a little bit later?
Well, I mentioned at this time, it is a permitted use. It's in the E1 zone of the former township. So that's fine. I think maybe we would want to hit on those other issues as we go through the presentation.
Okay, thank you. And we also have a SPRAB memo and one from the Environmental Commission, which I want to go over those as well when the time comes. Okay, Mr. DeGrazia, it's all yours.
Jerry, do you want to have our witnesses sworn in first before we get started, or should we go along?
Why don't we swear them in collectively? So if everybody who is going to testify, if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
So sworn or affirm. If you could please go around, state your full name and spell your last name.
Christopher Longo, Longo.
Thank you.
Kim Jackson, Jackson.
Thank you.
I'm Chad Grosshart, Groshart, Grosshart.
George Jacquemart, Jacquemart.
James Corner, Corner.
Thank you.
Todd Helmer, last name Helmer.
Thank you.
Mike Yap, last name APP.
Thank you.
Ron McCoy, last name MC, capital COY.
Thank you.
Mark Gabriel, Gabriel, Gabriel.
And Benjamin Petrick, last name is Petrick.
Thank you. Okay, Chris, is that it?
I think so. We have a couple extra in the background though, too. No, we probably will not use all of our witnesses. We did invite some people that have particular expertise here just in case we had some specific questions. So that'll be good. So should we get started?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michael, for the intro. For the record, my name is Christopher DeGrazia from the law firm of Fagery, Drinker, Biddle, and Reith, here on behalf of the applicant, trustees of Princeton University. As Michael indicated, the application before you this evening is for preliminary and final site plan and a variance in order to permit the construction of a structured parking facility. The location is at what we identify as a large parking lot known as Parking Lot 21. It's at the corner of Faculty and Fitzrandolph in the university's campus. This board probably recalls that in January, we presented a concept plan of the East Campus. And essentially that's the area from, well, actually it's the area just east of the large football stadium. At that time, we shared our planning and our vision for this East Campus. We talked about how the different components meet strategic priorities, how it creates a gateway for those arriving, how it creates opportunity for new athletic facilities like a new soccer stadium, and how it increases connectivity through vehicles, cyclists, pedestrians. At that time, we also indicated, we wanted to show you the full vision, the full plan, but we indicated that we would be coming in with a sequence of various site plans for each of these components and elements. The application tonight is the first major site plan. So this is the first component. It's an important component because it puts in place a lot of the necessary infrastructure that will allow us to do a nice orderly development of the East Campus. So it puts in place some circulation improvements, parking facilities, and other items that will allow us to develop the East Campus in a very orderly fashion. Unless there's any questions, we put together a nice presentation. We have a number of witnesses to go through. If you don't have any questions, I'd like to go to my first witness.
Yes, if you could let us know who that is and who needs to be able to, oh.
Yes, so this will be Ronald J. McCoy, University architect. He's presented many, many times before this board.
And Christopher, this is a series of slides, correct?
Yes, so let me do this. This is Exhibit A1,
okay,
which is a packet of slides that I think a total of 41 slides.
Okay.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Well, I'm going to pick up on the comments that both Christopher made and Michael made and walk through information related to the application. Along the way, I will try to catch some of the comments that try to present some responses to some of the comments that were made in some of the staff reports. But I think we will save time at the end, obviously, for any kinds of questions and comments that we want to follow up on. Also, during the presentation, I will introduce some of our technical experts and consultants, particularly around stormwater, landscape design, and traffic. So this is the aerial photograph of the site that people have just been describing. You'll see here the large parking lot in the southeast corner next to Fitzrandolph and north of Faculty Road that we call Lot 21. You'll also see the existing stadium that was referenced, Weaver Track, Jadwin, and Jadwin's arena here. This is largely what this area that we call the East Campus and the East Campus entry. And this is the area that we have been master planning as a sort of transformation of the campus for the variety of functions that were recently discussed. This plan shows the projected overall East Campus entry, the concept design that we shared with you previously when we talked just generally about the concept.
Yeah, and
On the-
Mr. McCoy, just for purposes of the record, as you go through the slides, if you could identify the number of the slide.
Okay, we're on slide 2.
Okay.
On the left, you'll see the campus plan principles. These campus plan principles are really broad-based principles that that are part of the 2026 campus plan. When we, because the scope of the campus plan is broad and the physical characteristics of each neighborhood that we touch is a bit different, we then refine those broad principles when we develop the planning strategies for each particular site. But these are broadly the kind of goals that we try to aspire to, that obviously talk about support of the university mission, identifying the sense of place, creating a welcoming environment, developing in a sense, in a way that is sustainable and responsible, and one that is mindful of the communities that extend beyond the edges of the campus. You'll see here some of the elements that are part of the East Campus Entry Master Plan. I'll start with the garage, which is what we're going to be talking about here at the corner of Fitzrandolph and Faculty Road. The setbacks are about 110 feet on the southern side and between 100 to 60 feet on the eastern side from Fitzrandolph. Across the street is the energy facility that we call Tiger, and we'll talk about that in a subsequent application. We also are creating a new home for varsity soccer just north of the parking garage, and a home for varsity soccer practice. So men's and women's soccer will both practice here and play in the new stadium. West of the soccer practice field is an open landscape that will be used for tailgating, and we're still planning in the future to be able to accommodate a flyover bridge over Lake Carnegie. That would be an arrival point for that, so that becomes a kind of site that we want to preserve for the future. Finney Campbell fields are existing, and in terms of circulation, you'll see a north-south drive that we call Stadium Drive, and an east-west drive that we call Jadwin Drive. I'll get into more of the circulation as we go through the presentation. This then is just another reminder of the existing condition. We will be renovating or changing the configuration and the accommodations of D'Annunzio Loop, making it a bit more functional and practical as we develop the site as well. So let's spend a little bit of time here on the overall traffic circulation and parking. So we are removing a lot of parking spaces.
And Mr. McCoy.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on page 5.
5, okay, thank you.
We are removing the parking lots on Ivy Lane and Western Way, including the surface parking on Western Way. And then we will be replacing the parking that currently sits on lot 21. That's a total of 1,201 spaces that will be removed. 499 of those spaces are the spaces that are on Ivy Lane and Western Way. You'll see the Fitzrandolph field here over to the east side of Fitzrandolph. That's used for overflow parking. We've accounted for that somewhat, but it's not assigned parking, so it's a bit of a sidebar to the major calculations that we will walk through. Now on page 6 or slide 6 of the presentation, I'm going to focus on the left-hand part of this slide, which talks about a kind of summary of the overall strategy for changes in the parking. On the right are some details that we could get back to if there's any questions about that. So again, 1,201 spaces will be removed. The total number of assignable parking spaces that will be added will be 1,552. These have changed slightly since the submission of the site plan, and this was noted in some of the staff reports. That results in a net increase of 351 parking spaces. Those are the 351 assignable parking spaces. The next two categories talk about the number of unassigned spaces at Fitzrandolph that would be removed, and then the total number of spaces that would be a net increase. Consider that for events. That would be 211 spaces. So that's the broad outline of the change, and the key number is that the net increase, after all the puts and takes, the reductions of those spaces on Ivy Lane Western Way, the addition of the garage, is a net add of 351 spaces. Now I'm on slide number 7. And it's really important to put the parking garage in the context of all of the initiatives related to a program called Revise Your Ride, which this slide summarizes. Revise Your Ride is a program that has been designed and developed by our Transportation and Parking Services group. And its primary mission is to provide alternate means for commuters to come to campus so that they can avoid single occupancy vehicles. And this has been an incredibly successful program. You'll see here under each one of these icons the kind of incentives that the university offers, everything from annual payments for carpooling, payments for van pooling, subsidies for mass transit, and payments for biking and walking, which means giving up your parking pass. And you'll see the number of people who have enrolled in those various programs. This results in the reduction of 734 assigned parking spaces that we would have needed to provide on the university campus. So there's a significant reduction in single occupancy spaces or assigned parking spaces through the benefits that are provided by this Revise Your Ride program. This is also, if you look at the lower right of this slide, related to some of our overall sustainability goals. We had, in 2016, we started with a 63% of commuters who came to campus in single occupancy vehicles. With the information I'm showing here on this slide, we've already been able to reduce that percentage to 53% of commuters who come in single occupancy vehicles. And our goal by 2026 is to further reduce that to 45% of single occupancy vehicles in assigned spaces. So this is important context for the parking garage structure that we're going to be talking about here. Now on slide 8, this is just a reminder of the overall East Campus entry master plan and the dotted boundary of the project proposal that we're here to talk about tonight, which is the East Campus garage. So it is a piece of the East Campus entry. It includes the garage, the site around the garage. It includes Jadwin Drive, which is the east-west connector, D'Annunzio Loop at D'Annunzio Pool, and it includes Stadium Drive. So that's then a kind of subset of the overall East Campus plan, the scope of this application. Now on page 9, this is just a reminder again of the 1,552 spaces that are going to be provided in the garage. And I think this is a bit more of a technical drawing, and it talks about most of the things that we've already addressed. Now you will see here, one of the purposes of this drawing is to illustrate that the surface parking lot that is west of the garage will be retained for some period of time. We want to try to use that as a place for people to park while the garage is under construction. Then when the garage is finished and we can vacate that, we can then begin to build the soccer practice field on that site. So it's really there in a temporary fashion until the garage is finished and can be occupied by the car spaces, by the cars, and then we will take over that site and begin construction on the soccer practice field. If we look at the egress and access to the parking garage on slide 10 here, you'll see that we have two primary points where there's both ingress and egress. One is at the northeast corner, one is at the southwest corner. There's also an exit that's at the southeast corner, and that can be managed by Transportation Parking Services for an entrance in the case of an event. So that's a kind of fungible strategy there. But the primary daily in and out for commuters, as I said, are at the northeast and at the southwest. You'll also see this drawing shows the widths of some of the roads in the campus. What I wanted to point out is that one of the changes we made, for example, at D'Annunzio Loop, to facilitate greater fluidity, and buses are now able to pass each other by our increase of the dimension of the road width in front of the D'Annunzio Pool. that releases some congestion that currently occurs at that D'Annunzio loop. You'll also see here on this western end of Jadwin Drive, we've widened the roadbed here so that we can have additional buses if there's a tournament or something like that. So we're trying to make sure that we provide plenty of space for buses to be parked while they are loaded or unloaded by athletes or participants in events. On the garage drive, which comes on the west side of the garage, again, it's a normal width of 22 feet, and it widens to provide a bus bay here at the northwest corner of the parking garage. And on Stadium Drive, which goes north-south, it also widens to provide some additional overflow here, but most importantly, we have TV trucks that have to park here for football games and for other events that are televised from the athletics area of the campus. And so that extra width here accommodates the parking of those TV trucks. Now I'm on slide 11, and I'm focusing a little bit more just on the detail of the northern transit plaza at the north side of the parking garage. The northwest corner is where the primary elevators are and the primary stair, and that's the sort of way that pedestrians would enter and exit, the primary place for pedestrians to enter and exit the parking garage. Obviously, it's the one that's closest to the campus, closest to all the destinations. Immediately then to the north of that is a covered facility that provides outdoor waiting for transit. It also provides an indoor waiting room, and it provides a covered bike parking. It has a widened sidewalk to the north of it that can just accommodate the flow of people that are coming and going. Obviously, for the daily commuter, it's a pretty steady movement of pedestrians in and out of the parking garage. But for an athletic event, there could be a kind of sort of extra group of people coming and going at the beginning and the ending of those events. And so we wanted to make this a kind of more generous area. The sidewalk here, this crosswalk crossing Jadwin Drive, will go to the future soccer stadium. That soccer stadium will be completed about the same time as the parking garage is completed. There's also comments about the sidewalk that's shown here across Fitz-Randolph in the staff reports. That goes right now to nothing, but about 4 months after the parking garage is completed, the energy facility, the Tiger Energy Facility, will be completed on that side. And I think that's just a question of logistics. We can have conversations with staff about whether or not we build that as part of the parking garage, which it's included because it's within the boundary of the scope of the project, or if there's some reason why it should be delayed until the opening of the Tiger facility, I'm sure we can accommodate that. That's just a question of site logistics. Now on slide 12, I'm going to turn this over to Georges Jacquemart, who can give a little bit of a sort of high level description of the traffic study and some of the goals that we're trying to achieve with that study, and how the overall site has been accommodated is designed to accommodate the traffic needs.
Thank you, Ron. Good evening.
George, before you get started, I just want to get you qualified as a traffic expert. George has appeared before this board many times and has qualified. We can go through his qualifications if you like.
Christopher, why don't you just do so very briefly?
George, you want to go through your qualifications in about a second?
Yes, I can do that. I have been testifying in front of the Princeton, at the beginning was Regional Planning Board since 1982, if I remember correctly. I'm a licensed engineer in New Jersey and a few other states. I'm also a licensed planner in the state of New Jersey. I'm the principal at BFJ Planning, responsible for our transportation work for the firm.
We like to present George as an expert.
We accept your qualifications. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have undertaken a very comprehensive and detailed traffic impact analysis of this proposed garage. We basically assumed that the garage would be 100% full, meaning there would be 1,552 cars parking in there, and studied the impacts at a total of 18 intersections surrounding the garage site. We did that in detail. We looked at the future traffic conditions at each of these 18 intersections, and for those intersections where we identified significant increases in delay that exceeded acceptable standards, we recommended mitigation measures. I think it's important to remember a few points that are relevant to the traffic impact analysis, especially as we consider the impacts on the adjacent residential neighborhood. The fact that we are moving about 500 parking spaces from the Ivy Lane Western Way area further south, close to Faculty Road, is a positive change in the sense that we're shifting traffic away from the residential streets that are surrounding this area. Also the fact that we're adding a new north-south link, Stadium Drive. Stadium Drive today, there's a road there, but it cannot be used by the commuters, but that will be opened up in the future to allow traffic to move in a north-south direction without necessarily driving into the residential neighborhood. And as is seen in this particular graphic, there will be another link in the next phase, in conjunction with the ES and C's project that will also create a connection between Western Way and Prospect Avenue. So that helps in terms of distributing the traffic in the area. Again, what's important also in terms of traffic impact, the net increase that we're talking about in terms of assignable parking spaces is 351. So in terms of additional vehicle trips in the area, it's a relatively modest number of vehicle trips. And again, the shift towards Faculty helps. Faculty Road is the one that will see the greatest increase in traffic volumes. And the road was designed for that purpose. From the beginning, when the university designed and worked with Faculty Road, it was always considered a distributor collector road that brings the traffic away from the community as much as possible towards Route 1 via Harrison, Washington, or Alexander. The traffic study that we submitted to the municipality was reviewed by your consultant, your traffic consultant. We received the comments from the traffic consultant and from your staff, and we had a conference call to discuss the comments and discuss the responses. We did respond to all the comments, and as far as I know, I think your traffic consultant is satisfied with the responses. I think a key conclusion in terms of mitigation measures is that we propose that the conditions be monitored about 1 year after the certificate of occupancy is given to the university. And the reason for that is that the garage will not fill up from day one when it's completed. It's going to take a number of years before the garage will be full. And also because of current traffic conditions due to the pandemic, traffic is down fairly significantly in this area. So it's very difficult to draw any precise conclusions at this stage. So we think, I know people have questions, have comments, but the key answer is, to observe as the conditions will change, as the garage will be used and filled up over the years. We can then do a monitoring study and undertake the improvements that may be needed at that time. That's basically our presentation. Obviously, I'll be happy to answer questions, possibly later on. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Moving on to some of the details of the pedestrian and bike and vehicular pathways. This is a diagram that shows in orange the routes of vehicles and in blue the pedestrian and bicycle paths. We kept the pedestrian and bicycle paths on the western side of the north-south road and on the southern side of the east-west road to minimize needs and opportunities for crossing, because most of the destinations that people will be seeking in this network would be on the southern side or on the western side.
And Ron, you're on slide 13, correct?
Slide 13, yes. And then you'll see the network of roads from Fitzrandolph, the new Garage Drive on the west, Factory Road on the south, and Jadwin Drive on the north that surround the parking garage and give access to it as I've described earlier. Now on slide 14, this is again a sort of neighborhood view, and it's simply just to reinforce that one of our goals is to improve and facilitate the flow of pedestrians and cyclists, both from the campus, but also just from the community, the surrounding neighborhood, across the site. And so these dedicated shared pathways for pedestrians and cyclists will come parallel to Jadwin, connect in front of Jadwin Gym, go around Chemistry Building and over Stryker Bridge, and across campus, say if the Dinky Station is a destination. This is only showing the east-west connections, which are part of a kind of network of east-west connections that work across campus. But this is the primary role of the East Campus entry, or opportunity, I'd say, at least campus entry, is to facilitate these kinds of east-west connections. Slide 15 is just a transition slide, and now I'll go to slide 16 and talk more specifically about the garage. So on this slide, we are looking at the lower level. As was mentioned, there are 6 parking levels in the garage. There's a bit of a grade from north to south, and so the southern entrance is to the lower level, and then ground level is from that northwest corner. You'll see the single exit at the southeast. You'll see the in and out at the southwest. We've also indicated some of the parking spaces for charging electric vehicles on this level, and I'll show you some more on the next level up. This little diagram in the lower right just simply shows the stacking of the garage. You cannot read it, I'm sorry, but I'll point out that the ground level, the level above this, is 16 feet floor to floor. We decided to make that extra tall for some flexibility into the future. And the typical floor to floor is 10'8". This shows the number of parking spaces on all of the floors. If we look then at the transit level, the northern entrance, you'll see the balance of the charging stations on slide 17. The balance of the charging stations for electric vehicles. We have, this slide should actually be revised. The system we're using there are 32 charging stations. It's a level 2 charging station that each charging station can serve 2 vehicles. And it can be, there are 2 different ways it can be used, where the 2 vehicles that are attached to that charging station can be recharged together in combination or in sequence, with one car taking the charge for half the time and then flipping to the second car. That's just a flexibility of operation of the system. So there actually are 64 vehicles that can be charged by that technology. You'll also see here a little bit of information about that northwest corner that I explained to you that has the elevator banks and one of the primary stairs. There are obviously stairs in the other 4 corners, but this northwest corner is really the primary destination that people coming in and out of the garage would seek, particularly commuters and people attending athletic events. Now on slide 18, this is just simply showing typical floor plans. In all floor plans, the ramp connecting levels is on the eastern side, and the parking bays are on the from there over to the western side. Now on slide 19, this is showing the opportunity. This is the rooftop, the 6th level of parking, and the opportunity for the photovoltaic array that we plan to build on this level. It simply is primarily a matter of negotiating a power purchase agreement. And we are trying to complete negotiations on power purchase agreements right now on the new solar fields that we're building in West Windsor. When we complete those negotiations, then we'll pivot and begin negotiations for the power purchase agreement on the parking garage. It's a primary opportunity to take advantage of the big, large area. And it's definitely something that we want to take advantage of. It's part of, again, our on-campus renewable energy plan that will serve the carbon neutrality goals by 2046. Now on slide 20, this is a sectional diagram through the site. We are looking here toward the west, so that the entrance is on the right and Faculty Road would be on the left. This shows the different levels of the parking structure. We are about from the northern side about 51 foot 9 inches to the top of the spandrel, and on the southern side about 59 feet 3 inches to the top of the spandrel at the top parking deck. The future solar array would extend beyond that, above that, and as well the stair tower and elevator overrun would extend beyond that. You'll see here on the northern side the shelter for the covered bike parking. And in this diagram, you'll see the bore field for the geoexchange system that that is being excavated and worked on right now. That is part of the development of the site underneath the parking structure to use that for geoexchange, the bore wells that are part of our plan for carbon neutrality by 2046. The two stars identify the entrances both at the northern transit plaza and at that southern level, which, as I mentioned, is slightly lower than the northern entrance. Now, if we go to slide 21, we begin to see now what the garage looks like. This is a view from looking south from that northwest corner. There was a comment, I think, in one of the reports about the building being looking rather utilitarian. I think that we talked about this with the SPRAB committee. And I think at that time, people had really only been able to see the technical drawings and not be able to, had not had the advantage of being able to look at the renderings. I'd say that it's a very functional building. Obviously, this is a very different type of building from, let's say, an arts building like the Lewis Center for the Arts. And I'd say it's both appropriately functional, but it has an awful lot of care and attention to making a kind of difference in the kind of architecture. So it's above and beyond your normal parking structure. You'll see here a articulated structural frame that gives it a bit more lightness and elegance, as opposed to a typical parking structure that you might see around town or in most cities. You'll also see then a textured pattern for that spandrel pattern that sits above the articulated frame, again providing a little bit more detail and character to the garage. And then I think importantly, since you're obviously looking up often through the glass at the stairs, we've used a wood layer underneath the stair landings and the stair treads, so that you have the warmth of that wood both at daytime and also particularly at nighttime when it's uplit. We also used wood as a feature material for the canopy, which is over the outdoor waiting area, the indoor waiting area, and the bicycle parking area. So a variety of techniques have been used to transform the parking garage, but I think, again, to an appropriately sophisticated level. You'll see when Jim Corner talks about the landscape, we're also paying a lot of attention to a kind of robust landscape around the garage so that it sits into the landscape and further kind of reducing the presence of the garage, particularly at the south and east sides of the garage, where it's more visible to the public. You'll see in the outdoor waiting area next to the bus drop off here, and there would also be buses that could come to pick up passengers on the northern side. If we step now to on slide 22, and now we're at the northeast corner, looking down Fitzrandolph out toward Faculty Road to the south, looking to the new entrance to the East Campus along Jadwin to the west. You'll see again the transit plaza, the waiting rooms, the covered area for bicycle and outdoor waiting in the foreground here, and you begin to get a sense of the landscape. But again, when we get to the landscape slides, I think they'll be more precise and accurate, and Jim can talk more specifically about the landscape as we get there. Going to slide 23, we are now at on Faculty Road, looking both to the west and to the north at the southeast corner of the garage. And this will be the area that is really mostly shielded by the landscape. You're seeing the one exit at that southeast corner of the garage. Back on slide 24 now at a more detailed view of the transit plaza at the entrance here. Again, the same features of the architecture that I talked about earlier. Now you're between the sort of landscape screen and the stormwater management landscape that's along Jadwin Drive here, and at the arrival and entrance to the garage. There was a discussion in SPRAB. I'm not sure if it made it into the final reports. Bill Wolf was concerned, wanted to make sure that we had a covered protection that in this little gap between the waiting area and the garage. And this rendering's not quite precise, but there is a covered protection from inside to outside. That was just something that SPRAB had comments on, but I don't think it was in their final report. This is I'd say an early rendering of the space, a very simple waiting area. This will be part of the wayfinding and signage package that we are still developing. I'll talk about that in a second. And we have opportunities here for digital information that can tell passengers or visitors about their onward journey. This is slide 25. Slide 26, back outside now looking to the west. Again, you see the covered outdoor parking that's part of the transit plaza and the arrival sequence of the garage. Slide 27 now just simply talks about the number of parking spaces, bicycle parking spaces that are provided underneath this shelter at the transit hub. We have 108 spaces that will include we're just identifying 16 spaces that could be part of a bike share system. Obviously, this is fungible. If the bike share system grows, we can trade off other spaces, but with personal bike storage. And we're also going to be including 12 spaces for electric bike charging in this area. We do see this as a transit hub, very importantly, that commuters could choose to hold their bike here under the covered bike parking area overnight, and then they could arrive the next morning, pick up a bike, and head across campus to wherever their destination might be. So slide 28 talks a little bit about the way.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
Before we move on to another topic, while we're still talking about the garage itself and design, I'd like to either have you or George just address the width of the parking space. So under the plan, we are proposing 18 by 8.5 foot stalls. And that's, I think, 6 inches less in width than the municipal ordinance. However, this does match all of our facilities, our university parking lots, and it's industry standard. And that's why we're requesting a variance for that condition. So I don't know if you want to reiterate that or have George.
I think George and Kim can speak to that. Kim, maybe
George, do you want to
operation.
just touch upon that briefly? Since we are requesting a variance, I want to get to that before we move on to other issues.
Yes, I can address that. The 8.5 wide parking stalls are becoming the standard for long-term parking. You know, that means parking in kind of office environments or residential environments, and also for parking garages. And it's also, sometimes we call it one size fits all. It has become the industry standard in lieu of providing for compact spaces and standard spaces. We tend to move away from this idea of compact spaces and standard spaces because they're difficult to enforce. And that's why the 8.5 standard is now widely accepted. And we have a lot of locations in Princeton, by the way, where we have today parking stalls that are 8.5 feet wide.
Thank you, George.
Thanks, George. All right, moving to slide 28 here. This is, there was some commentary again in staff reports about wayfinding. What we can say right now is that we're in the process of designing the wayfinding system for the garage. And what we're doing with the wayfinding system is integrating it into a new update to our campus wayfinding master plan. We've hired a London-based firm called Applied Wayfinding. They're very sophisticated and expert in wayfinding strategies. They designed the wayfinding for the City of London. They have offices in North America, and they've worked both in cities and campuses around North America and throughout the world. And this simply tells the scope of the wayfinding strategy, that it's more than just the garage itself, but it has to do with the arrival to the campus, the arrival to the garage, finding a parking space, and I would say that the garage will have a guidance system that will tell visitors how many parking spaces are available at each level. Then exiting the garage on foot, finding and identifying vertical circulation, telling a story about the onward travel, which is where you're going to go next. That's the waiting room, role of the waiting room. And then returning to the garage. The exterior approach, this tower, the stair tower at the corner is a bit of a beacon, a place of arrival. Finding your right level, finding your car, and then exiting garage. Those are the roles of the wayfinding system as part of the overall user journey to campus. And these will be developed as the design progresses. Now I'm on slide 29, which is simply a transition slide to stormwater management. I'm going to introduce Mark Gabriel from Niche Associates, who will talk about the stormwater design.
Thank you, Ron. Chris?
So Mark, yeah, before you go on, we'd like to have you qualified. Can you briefly talk about your education and licensing and experience?
Sure. My name is Mark Gabriel. Been a civil engineer for 15 years now. I've licensed in New Jersey and in Massachusetts. And my education is a Bachelor of Science in Engineering from Northeastern University.
We'd like to present him as an engineer expert in stormwater management.
Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. We accept your qualifications.
Thank you. All right. So starting on slide 30, the slide here shows the existing and proposed, existing being the left, and the proposed drainage watershed analysis, and they're proposed on the right. The green areas are the landscape areas, and the gray areas being the impervious areas. The image on the left reflects the existing conditions that is out there today, which is within the limit of work for this project, and part of the analysis, which is surface parking areas and landscape and walkways. On the right, you can see the garage there in gray, landscape areas, the new circle over by just south of Finney Campbell there, the driveway circle, and the like. The drainage analysis was broken into 3 design points that are south of the site, with the natural topography of the site going from higher elevations in the Western Way area towards Faculty Road. The design points are blue triangles on the screen there, yep. And Stadium Drive and portions of Jadwin Drive discharge to the design point to the left. The remainder of Jadwin Drive and the garage site, as well as Garage Drive, discharge to the point on the right, and a small portion of Garage Drive discharges to the point in the middle. Between the existing and the proposed, there is an increase in pervious area or landscape areas in the design for this project. Areas outside of these watershed boundaries, such as, which I know was a comment on one of the on the stormwater peer review letter. So areas in, say, Finney Campbell, softball fields, stadium area, those areas that are outside of this watershed analysis are actually piped into the existing drainage systems that are there today, traverse through our site and continue to discharge, where all 3 discharge points end up down draining to Lake Carnegie below. So those areas outside the limit of this analysis are not being discharged to the proposed stormwater facilities in this project. The next slide.
Slide 31.
Yep, slide 31. This slide here helps visualize how the stormwater management is captured, treated, and mitigated for the project. The stormwater management strategies include best management practices with a focus on low impact development and green infrastructure techniques that will be used to mitigate the changes in runoff promote recharge where feasible, and provide water quality treatment. Though the soils on the site were deemed tighter type soil, hydraulic soil group D through the geotechnical investigations, the proposed systems they were designed with an open bottom to help facilitate recharge and allow stormwater to infiltrate where needed. But that design didn't change the stormwater mitigation aspects of the design, and we addressed that in the peer review letter. It's just there to help promote infiltration. The proposed stormwater management systems includes bioretention facilities at the intersection of Stadium Drive and Jadwin Drive, and along the south side of Jadwin Drive as well, with more streetscape bioretention facilities. Grass swale is proposed on the east side of the garage to treat a portion of the roof runoff there and work with the landscaping in that area. And the subsurface facilities located below the grounds, east, west, south of the garage, those also support the stormwater quality and quantity that's required for the project. And throughout the site, there are water quality structures dispersed to help also support the removal of total suspended solids in the stormwater. We did receive comments from, as I mentioned before, from Joe Scupian and Jim as well. We have since tweaked the stormwater model for the project, and we have provided that stormwater model back to Joe and Jim so that they could review that to make sure that we had addressed those comments that Joe had. And Ron, I'll put it back to you.
Great, thanks, Mark. Now I'm on slide 32, which is simply a transition slide. And with this one, I'm going to introduce Jim Corner, founding partner of James Corner Field Operations. James Corner Field Operations is the landscape architectural firm for all of the projects that we're currently doing on campus. And that's a very intentional strategy that the university adopts so that we can use landscape as the overall connective tissue and to reinforce the strength of the planning and to make sure that there's a kind of cohesiveness throughout the design of landscape on campus. So Jim, I'm going to start with slide 33, and you can describe the landscape strategy.
And we would like to also have you talk a little bit about education and experience. Jim?
Yes, good evening, everybody. I'm a landscape architect. I have over 30 years of professional experience. I'm licensed in New Jersey and many other states across the country. And we have the great pleasure and privilege of working with Princeton University as their campus landscape architect.
We'd like to present him as an expert in landscape design and architecture.
Sorry, we accept your qualifications. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can see in this plan that we're using a significant amount of planting to scale down the building. The building is also set back significantly from the curb lines. And the overall intent of the planting is to create a kind of a woodsy country lane character. The species are mixed. We have oaks, maples, sycamore, hickory. These are native species to New Jersey. They aid with the screening. They aid with stormwater and carbon sequestration. They enhance biodiversity, and they provide seasonal variation throughout the year. In the initial application, we had fewer trees than we have now. We have many more now, exceeding what is required. In the table at the top, you see that the garage application requires 98 trees. We're providing 106. And even greater in the context of the larger East Campus, where there's 340 trees required, we're providing 414. Next, please, Ron. These are just some examples of the tree and shrub and grass palette that shows color, seasonal variation, texture, as I said, a sort of a woodsy New Jersey country feel. Next.
That was slide 34, now 35.
This is a technical section on the east face of the garage as it meets Fitz-Randolph Road. You can see the shared path is set back from the road, and there's trees on both the planting strip along the road as well as in the what we're calling the bioretention area, and you can see the stormwater vault is shown there too. Next.
Slide 36.
And this is a impression of the kind of character of that planting. It's not really an alley. It's more of a mixture of trees and shrubs that will create a woodsy character. Next.
Slide 37.
And on the Faculty Road side of the garage, we see a similar section. The pedestrian path is set back from the road. And there's significant plantings here, as well as the stormwater vault. And next.
Slide 38.
And again, a general impression of the planting palette along Faculty Road. And I think that concludes our slides. Ron, thank you.
That does. Great. Now, slide 39 is a transition slide. And with this, I'm going to now introduce Chad, and he will give his qualifications.
Hi, I'm Chad Grosshart, the Associate Director from Atelier 10's Lighting Design Studio. I have about 25 years of professional practice as a lighting designer. I hold a master's degree in architectural lighting design from Parsons School of Design in New York City. And I've been the master plan lighting designer for the Lake Campus as well as the East Campus, and have done site lighting for Yale University and Harvard University in the last few years.
We accept your qualifications. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The lighting approach for the East Campus garage project is pretty straightforward. We designed it and the entire master planning of the new areas on the Princeton campus to be good stewards of nature and the natural night sky, while providing enhanced safety and energy use for Princeton and for the users of the area. There really is a very simple pole approach for the pathway lighting. You know, we're targeting over 1 foot candle for each of these areas. It's around 2.5 to 2.3, as you see. These are 12-foot poles, depending on the location, either looking exactly like the existing poles or slightly more modern. They are more uniform, provide a better sense of safety than much of the existing campus lighting, and are full cutoff so that they don't provide light pollution into the night sky. I think there's one more slide that talks about the quality of light on the site.
Slide 41.
Yes, as Ron said, you know, the stair tower is meant to be a bit of wayfinding and help you to find your car after you know, an evening of you know, athletics or meetings on campus. And so we want it to be visible, but not to be a nuisance. So it's all very indirect. It glows a bit like a lantern, but the light itself is not glary. It's really about the planes that are being lighted. It's important to note that both the stair tower and the parking garage itself have got occupancy sensors, motion sensors that step the brightness down by about 50% when the areas have been unoccupied for a certain amount of time. The idea is not that these go on and off a lot, but that once most of the events for the evening have settled down, you'll see the entire parking garage and the stair towers stepping down in brightness.
Great. I think that's it. I'm going to propose that I stop sharing my screen. We can pull up the slides whenever there's a question if we need to refer to something specific, but I think it's a little bit easier to have a conversation and to see each other if I stop sharing.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Chad.
So that concludes our presentation. As Ron indicated, we're here with the presenters, also some additional experts if you have any particular questions.
Before we take questions from the board, I guess I would ask the professionals if the issues that they raised in their memos, I'm thinking specifically about Stormwater and Jim Purcell, it was testified that the questions that were raised by you and Joe Scupion had been addressed, and I just want to confirm that that's correct from your perspective, and there are any other, likewise, our traffic consultant, any other, is Mr. Oh, there you are, Jim. I'll ask you first if you could weigh in, Mr. Purcell.
Jim, we can't hear
you, although it doesn't look like you're muted.
How about that? No?
There we go. Yes.
You can hear me. Okay.
Yes.
I put a headset on and wanted to make sure the microphone was working. Jerry, do I need to be sworn in for this?
Yeah. If you could raise your right hand. Didn't I swear you in earlier? I thought I did.
You swore me in for YWCA.
That's what, okay. You swear for the testimony about to give will be the truth.
I do.
That's sworn or affirm. Please state your full name for the record.
Jim Purcell, Purcell. I would like to say that we had a very long conversation with Joe Scupion and with Mark Gabriel related to the stormwater management. The applicant has agreed to respond to all of our comments. The first response was to provide a new stormwater calculations, HydroCAD calculations, which they have already done. Mr. Scupion has responded that he had a chance to take a quick look at them and had no further comments. That was yesterday afternoon. And his response was that if he did have comments, he'd get back to us by the end of the day. Unfortunately, Joe is not available tonight, but I believe that the engineers have met all of our concerns. And I know that we have a draft response to all of our comments, and a lot of these have been noted as conditions. And Christopher, I will ask you whether or not that draft that you sent to me is being offered tonight because I have a feeling that at the end of this, we're going to go through each of them and identify the conditions on the approval as we get through a motion.
Yeah, we have no objections to the conditions in the stormwater management report.
And Krista, are you going to mark as Exhibit A2 the document you circulated called Responses to Planning Board Reports, Princeton Environmental Commission Report, and SPRAB Report?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Do you want me to mark that as A2? Yes.
Yeah, you indicated at one point during communication.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
A couple of other items that were of importance in my memo included some landscaping comments. I see that the landscaper has responded. And I will note that even though I had suggested removal of a couple of trees that are invasive species, I have spoken with our arborist, and there is communication between Princeton University's landscape department and our arborist about controlling the tree of heaven, which is a host tree for the spotted lanternfly, which is of concern. So they're working that out separately. So I have no further concerns on the landscaping side of things. They have also mentioned that they will comply with my request to show site triangles, which was a concern. And if it's okay, I'd like to ask Heather Balgowan from McMahon Associates, who was on, to comment further on the traffic study.
Yes, please.
Sure. Like Jim had said, the municipality.
I think Mr. Mueller needs to swear you in.
Oh, yeah.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirm. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Heather Balgowan, B as in boy, Algowan.
Thank you.
Like Jim had said, the municipality and the applicant, we had a lengthy conversation regarding my comment letter on traffic. The applicant, in my opinion, has addressed my comments. They had agreed to comply with everything, or they will comply, meaning that they've agreed to do the post-development study once the parking garage is open and operational. So they're willing to work with me on that regarding improvements if necessary at the time, particularly along Faculty Drive. That was my main concern, is the shift of traffic from where it is currently all to Faculty Drive. So they had agreed to do a post study and, you know, come up with any potential improvements if necessary, if it's needed at the time. The other concern I had was how the traffic is during events, soccer events, whether it be one or multiple. And they provided a very comprehensive study to me regarding how they handle that. And I don't know, you know, again, I'm not an expert on this. If George, if you just wanted, you know, a quick summary of how, you know, that you guys hire an outside firm and you get Princeton Police involved. So the traffic flow during these major events, you know, is taken care of, and it's safe.
Yeah, Heather, for that, I think I would like to introduce Kim Jackson, our Transportation Management Director, to address that.
Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, I don't have a license, but I am a certified administrator of public parking. So that is my credential, and I've been with the university for 12 years. As Heather mentioned during our discussion, we talked about traffic control during events, and there's a couple of things that are really important. One, with the removal of the spaces along Ivy Western Way and concentrating the parking, especially for events in this garage, it seems a little counterintuitive, but actually it will be much easier for us to manage traffic from one location versus having lot 21, the field, the parking lots along Ivy Western Way, the streets. Also during that time, we can direct the ingress and egress from the garage. So we hire an outside firm to come in and help us with parking and events. And with the Princeton Police Department, our own public safety department, we can direct the flow of traffic, we can control lights, and so we can monitor as we either are filling or emptying the garage during these events to make sure that we are reducing the impact of traffic on faculty, on Washington, on Harrison, within the neighborhood, et cetera. So as we currently do with our events, we will continue to do that here at the garage. And as I said, I think it'll be much easier from this one location than it is currently from us when we have multiple locations.
I have a question about a point that was made, I think it was in what is now A2. It was about access and controlling access. Maybe it was during events. And the idea was that there would be a technology put in place that would recognize license plates and it would let people in on that basis. But how does that work when it's visitors?
So again, visitors will be allowed in the garage. It can read their plates, but that won't stop them from being able to park in the garage.
Okay.
During events, we would probably not use the license plate recognition so that we can move people faster because again, we'll have people at the entrances monitoring that traffic flow. But in the day-to-day, visitors are welcome. Their plates will be scanned. And if they proceed to the visitor parking areas, that way our parking enforcement staff will know that they're there for temporary use or they're there for an event. And so we can control that flow as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And could I ask Jim a question?
Please.
You indicated that in terms of the landscaping comments in your report, their landscape architect had addressed them. Should those be, have all of those things been incorporated into a set of plans that have been submitted, or should those all be conditions?
Let me look at Exhibit A2 and see what. Yes, they will have to, I think they'll have to be a condition. I will need to see plans that adjust the planting to make sure that the site triangles are adequate. And then there may be others in their response to the landscaping report that I think they've identified as conditions. But I will need to see additional plans at some point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other staff issues that staff brought up that we want to quickly deal with before board members begin to pose questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir, Mr. Laplace.
Yeah, I first want to thank the university and Mr. McCoy especially because he covered this, some of the points that I had raised in my memo, certainly in particular regarding the architecture and the appearance of the exterior of the garage, and also the need for wayfinding, and that was addressed, so thank you. I have some follow-up questions in two areas, transportation and then lighting. First with transportation, I noticed on, I don't know what slide it was, but when it talked about the circulation system, there's a proposed new road that was shown in a dashed line that would be in proximity to the new School of Engineering and Applied Science, and it would be a north-south road going from Ivy Lane up to Prospect. And I guess it more or less replaces an existing road, Roper Road, that's to the west of it. And I was just wondering, in the presentation about transportation or the discussion, it was said that the changes are being made to the circulation system to move traffic away from the residential neighborhoods. But this new road is very, very much closer to the residential neighborhoods than certainly Roper was, which was more interior to the university campus. So I was just wondering if the university could maybe respond to that concern.
Sure. I guess this would be for George.
Yes. Yes, the road is further east from Roper Lane, but that doesn't diminish its function, and that's very similar to Roper Lane. I mean, Roper Lane acts as a kind of access road to those parking lots. It's not used much, as a through street. It's primarily used by vehicles that drive to and from the parking areas that are adjacent to it. Whereas this street is going to be used to some degree. It's not going to have very high volumes of traffic. It will be, similar to some of the residential streets in the area. But we felt that it was important to provide that street, even though it does not carry very heavy volumes. It's important to provide it because it does shift some traffic that otherwise would be on Fitzrandolph. So we do reduce the amount of traffic on Fitzrandolph to some degree by having that road. The road also will serve as access to that future science building that will be built there. So it has also that function of access, where trucks can do their deliveries to that building off that particular road.
Okay, and I have two more questions in transportation, so probably for you. I noticed that on-street parking is to be removed from Ivy Lane. Could you explain why, and does that mean the cartway is going to be narrowed, or what's the benefit of removing existing on-street parking from Ivy?
The key benefit, the first benefit is that it reduces the traffic that's generated by that parking on that particular street. I think the goal here is to make Ivy Lane in the future, given these new buildings that will line Ivy Lane, the goal is to make it very pedestrian friendly, to reduce the speeds and to reduce the volumes. It will still be open to traffic and it will still fulfill an important function, but the volumes will be decreased. I think that that's the main goal here, is to make that a very pedestrian and bicycle friendly street. It will be designed to accommodate bicycles on the road and to slow down traffic. And so that's part of the idea of, shifting the on-street parking way. The on-street parking that's there today is parking by permit. It's not open to the general public. It's open, for Princeton University graduate students and faculty and staff that have a permit to park there. And so that's the main goal.
Okay, I know usually a lot of people talk about on-street parking as another way to do traffic calming. It narrows the lanes or the width of the movement area and a circulation area of a street. Is the cartway going to be narrowed at all, or is it just going to be as wide as it is now, but with no parking?
Yes, the cartway will be 22 feet curb to curb. I'm not sure whether all the design decisions have been made on that, but it's definitely under consideration, under design to narrow that street. And it will, we're talking of a street that may have what's called a suggestion lane, where there's one lane in the middle for traffic going two-way, and having bicycle shoulders on either side. So it's going to be a design that by nature will force traffic to slow down from what you see today.
Okay, and it sounds good if it accommodated bicycles or some other users. The other transportation question I had is, staff had talked about and been concerned about with this idea of consolidating pretty much all the East Campus parking in one spot that's towards the east where the garage is, from all the surface lots that are basically along Ivy Lane and between Washington and Harrison corridors. What is the impact? I understand the impact on Faculty Road, but what's the impact on Harrison Street? Because Harrison Street is already very much burdened by regional traffic and traffic coming in and out of Princeton, and certainly as you take it out to Route 1.
Yeah, well, the traffic study that we prepared gives us all those details in terms of the amount of traffic, that will go onto Faculty towards Washington or go onto Faculty towards Harrison. And yes, we do project increases in the delays along Faculty, but they're still within what we call reasonable ranges, what we call traffic levels of service D. That's typically considered as an acceptable condition during peak hours. So at this stage, we feel that these intersections can still handle that traffic that we predict without any widening. We do suggest some changes in signal phasing, sometimes shifting some green time from one approach to the other will facilitate and will decrease some of the delays. And as I mentioned earlier, we do recommend that this be monitored because especially right now, we're in a time where it's very difficult to predict what really will happen in a year.
Right.
So I think the university is aware that there will be increases along Faculty Road. We have discussed it. We have discussed potential ideas of, for instance, adding a right turn lane at Faculty and Harrison to facilitate that movement. So those are things that we are aware of, but we feel that at this stage, we don't want to, widen without necessarily having the real justification. I think there's a general goal or a general wish here to protect the neighborhood as much as possible. And every time you widen a road in this neighborhood, you're going to get more traffic. So the idea is to, protect the character and also protect the pedestrian friendliness. Whenever you widen a road and pedestrians have to cross 3 lanes and they have to cross 2 lanes that go in the same direction, there's a certain deterioration of pedestrian conditions. And so we are very careful in terms of making those improvements that we discussed. We discussed it with your traffic engineer. I think we're all aware of that and we will monitor it.
Well, I was in no way implying that I wanted any of the roads to be widened. So just, it made me a little nervous when you said widened about 4 times. So be clear on that. Yeah. One more question I had was regarding lighting. Mentioned about lighting around the garage and the new streets that are going to serve the garage. And from one of the slides, it looked like a very contemporary fixture. And I had a question, maybe this is for Mr. McCoy or for the lighting consultant, but will this be contemporary style lighting and there's a departure from the more vintage traditional lighting that we see elsewhere on campus?
Yeah, so East Campus will have a mix. East Campus is kind of a transition zone as we see it, looking at the overall campus master plan from a lighting standpoint. Lake Campus will have a more modern fixture. It provides much better cutoff and better performance. But East Campus will have a mixture of the traditional gas lamps that are on campus now, and then sort of as the pathways continue over onto Lake Campus, will transition through. So this is sort of a transitional neighborhood that'll have probably about half and half, a little bit more like 2/3 of the traditional gas lamps. And then as you get sort of out of the East Campus range and closer to the borders into Lake Campus, it'll start picking up sort of at a natural spot between the old campus fixture and the new campus fixture.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make some comments on behalf of the PEC. We're not staff, but I don't know when you think is the right time for me to make my comments.
I think you can do that right now. That'd be fine.
Okay, great. So PEC prepared a memo. Even though it's not staff, it was pretty extensive, and so I just wanted to highlight some of the things that were mentioned, and ask the applicant to address whatever is relevant. So I just wanted to kind of go over the executive summary, or the summary to just, and I guess give it a sense of the overall issues. I think a lot of the issues were addressed in the testimony. I think that the PEC certainly applauds the university for all the environmental considerations and sustainability considerations, although PEC is always trying to push the envelope and make sure that it's as green as possible. So the first thing brought up in the memo is regarding using naturalized storm basins with low impact development design. I think that was demonstrated. I think that there's clearly issues with the soils. So there was these basins, structured basins, but I don't know if it's possible to incorporate more natural ways of detention. Also, I'm not sure if it was mentioned, but one of the things that PEC recommended was permeable pavement and porous pavers, which I didn't really see much mention of or hear much mention of. Number two, providing for rainwater harvesting. I don't know if this was mentioned or addressed, but potentially using the water that could be captured on site for irrigation. Using potable water for extensive irrigation, it seems like kind of a waste when you can capture it. I guess there was number three was dealing with trees. It seemed like there was more than actually PEC thought, so that's good to hear. And it was good to hear that overall, in the context, more trees are going to be planted. Then also, in terms of developing a system for stormwater runoff regarding the actual structure, I'm not sure if that was really discussed too much, but it would be good to hear that addressed. And then I don't think there was mention also about the Park Smart certification, but PEC recommends that the Princeton commits to the gold level. And then PEC also asks, or supports the size parking space variance. So that was the executive summary. Some of the other things mentioned, I'll go over real quickly, were regards to concrete, using low carbon concrete. There's new technologies which we'd be interested to hear about. Not using halons for fire suppression, making sure that the drains clean the chemicals from the cars and the parking deck, and also we asked that the applicant commit to green cleaning practices. Also, in regards to the array, we understand that sometimes the finances aren't in the favor, but we do understand that the applicant is very committed to doing the installation of solar panels, but we also ask that if the solar panels are not installed right away, that the concrete is made with a white cement to be reflective, to mitigate heat island effect. Another request is if it's possible to install a DC fast charger. We're very impressed with the amount of EV charging stations. We're very happy to see that. Although we were wondering if it would be possible to install a DC fast charger, and then also incorporate strategies to reduce idling. And then some other questions deal with how this project will impact wildlife, seeing that it's right next to a natural area next to the Carnegie Lake, using organic best management practices for landscaping as opposed to fertilizers and chemical herbicides, using FSC labeled lumber. I'm glad to see some wood being used in the project, but we hope that it's FSC. We hope that the demolition materials should be recycled wherever possible. There are some existing structures. And then we hope that green building supplies and materials are sourced locally. And I'm glad to see that there was consideration to wayfinding and making sure that there's good access or wayfinding for pedestrians. So that's it. Yeah, sorry, that was a lot, but I hope we can address a few.
Thank you. So to respond to that, I think I would like Ron McCoy to chime in. You may not have seen it, but in an effort to kind of organize our materials, we did provide a short narrative to address or comment on the staff reports, and it did include the Environmental Commission report. But generally, I think Ron could, talk about it.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I just wanted to ask to see from what the planning board, if they have a sort of preference. We've been able to have one-on-one conversations with staff around other issues and then report to the planning board where we stand on those issues. In this case, there's a nice, long, robust list of issues here that we can go through, or would it be the pleasure of the board for us to work with PEC separately and then report back to the board? I mean, I'm happy to go through responses to all these. As Christopher said, we've responded to these in writing, and I'm happy to respond to all of them here.
I don't recall having seen the response the university provided to the PEC, and I assume it was you responded also to the Site Plan Review Advisory Board comments as well.
Yes.
Louise,
that might have been my oversight, but yes, Mr. Muller?
That was all in A2. That document we referred to earlier called responses to planning board reports,
Okay.
Environmental Commission report and SPRAB report. So those were sections within that report.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, my apologies, I didn't see that. Yeah, I'll look through the documents to take a look.
Well, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but was that something that was up on the municipal website in the section on this?
Yeah, our intent was, our intent was to try to get it on just so that it was more visible. But the person posting, we was not available today to get it on. We got the reports.
Oh, so it just came today?
I think I provided it earlier to the staff, maybe yesterday.
Okay.
But we tried to get it posted today. Initially, we were thinking that we were just going to give clarification to staff, telling them exactly how we were responding to concerns. And then we thought more broadly, it would be better to just get it all out there. So we attempted to post it, and we weren't able to do it today. So.
And that was just this morning. I did not see it yesterday.
Okay, well, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Carrie. My impulse is just to ask if anyone knows whether there were comments raised by the Environmental Commission that you could not address, or that you were planning not to do, and just, zero in on those things rather than trying to go through the whole list of things Mr. Taxarni raised. I mean, I don't want to just assume that everything's kosher, because I think there may be members of the public or members of the board who might ask some of these same questions. And do you know, Mr. DeGrazia, if there were requests made? Go
There
ahead.
were a couple of points that we were looking at evaluating, and things that we did not choose specifically for this project, like rainwater harvesting for one. Ron, do you want to take the lead on that and just?
Yes, why don't we go ahead and go through it then. I'm going to ask Mark Gabriel if he can begin and talk about the stormwater concerns. And Mark, I assume you've seen the responses that we've provided? If not, then I'll provide them and you can add commentary.
I did see those from PEC, so Zeman, thank you for that. And I do have the common responses here.
Okay, and if you could just focus on those things that you were not able to respond affirmatively to, that'll save us time.
Okay, all right. So I believe comment number 1 was talking about the permanent pavers and the porous asphalt. And in that regards, with all the green infrastructure that we are doing on this project, and the grass swales and the like, we didn't see the programming on this site warranting permeable pavers and porous pavement. So it just wasn't used as a tool for stormwater management on this project, because we really wanted to focus on the stormwater management of the streetscape and the landscaping. So that's that. Louise, what you were just saying there on comment number 1. Comment number 2 was the rainwater harvesting, which Chris has already mentioned wasn't pursued for this particular project. I think that heads us over to comment number 3.
Yeah, comment 3, we addressed in testimony, talking about the additional trees. I think there was satisfaction with that.
Comment 4 we should describe. That's the rooftop of the garage and the discharge of that. I think you went through it in your testimony somewhat, but maybe you can elaborate on that one a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. So Xenon with the rooftop, well, you talked about the decks of the garage, but let's just start with the rooftop of the garage. Rooftop of the garage, a portion of the rooftop ends up discharging to the surface, to a grass swale at the surface in the landscape area along the east side of the garage, and it's treated in manner and overflows into the subsurface system below it. And then another portion, the bulk of the rest of the roof of the garage goes to some water quality units underground for treatment, and then to the subsurface systems there for treatment. So we have a green infrastructure approach for the roof of the garage that ties in with the landscaping on the east side. Regards to the other decks in the garage, those discharge are captured and discharged, go through an oil grit separator, and go to the sanitary sewer system and out the sewer.
Okay, I'll pick up with comment number 5, having to do with the Park Smart certification program. The project has yet to be submitted for review, but we are obviously we've committed to submitting this for Park Smart certification. The final level of certification is to be determined, and the project is currently tracking toward gold level certification in the Park Smart certification system. Jumping down to, let me see here.
Ron, before we do that, can I just ask Mr. Gabriel, in terms of the executive summary, the first sentence which says, and I know there was testimony on this, maybe you could just clarify it, increase the use of naturalized stormwater basins with low impact development design strategies and green infrastructure, including bioretention, rain gardens, and vegetated swales. Could you just briefly summarize where the university is, and I apologize because I know this was discussed.
So, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, you could. I mean, that was part of the management strategy that you had on the exhibit that you showed, and you identified those portions.
Correct. Exactly, Jerry. So just so I understand your question, you're wondering where those best management practices, the green infrastructure is being designed and used for this project. Is that what I heard?
That's basically it, yes.
Yep. Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure I understood that. Yeah, so along at the intersection of the new Jadwin Drive, the future Jadwin Drive and Stadium Drive, there's a bioretention facility proposed at the surface there, so water can sheet flow from the roadways onto that facility. And as also along the south side of Jadwin Drive, which is the east-west roadway, we have pockets of bioretention facilities just outside the curbing in that area that capture and treat the stormwater as well. And another function of that is the grass swale to the east of the garage, another green infrastructure approach. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I know they've been discussed.
And Jerry, for record,
Absolutely.
that would be slide 31 was the one that showed those elements when he went through it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Christopher.
And Mr. Gabriel, in your view as a professional, is the university, are you, in your plan, are you making what you would consider maximum use of vegetated stormwater systems, green infrastructure systems? Did you emphasize vegetated systems over permeable pavement, for example? I'm just sort of trying to get at the question of choosing one over the other and the rationale for that.
Yes. And I would say that that is what we did on this project here with the natural landscape approach. And you saw those, if you recall, those renderings with the landscaping. So blending in the stormwater with the landscaping on the project. And we really did maximize that for this project.
And then, can you talk just a little bit about the tree plantings? I know you increased the number of them over what we saw in the concept plan, I think, and you talked a little bit about the palette and the various, the focus on a forested feel. But could you talk about the stormwater benefits of the trees that will become large trees, even though they're not part of a stormwater management best practice per se?
So I'm hoping I can get a little help from the landscape architect.
Let's let Jim.
Yes, sure.
Yes.
Firstly, the way the ground
Oh, sorry about that. I'm directing it to the wrong person. Thanks, Mr. Corner. I should have been looking at you. Not that you can tell who I'm looking at.
No, firstly, the way the ground is modeled and shaped, there are swales and depressions in the ground, so water will accumulate naturally too. It doesn't all just run off into the street. And then where we have those wetter areas, we have species that can tolerate the wetness, but they also help to dry out the ground too. I mean, they are effective at transpiring moisture back into the atmosphere. So we're limited with the amount of space we can work with, and we already have significant subgrade stormwater basins. But where we can, we're actually scalloping the ground to permit puddling and accumulation of water to go naturally back into the ground. And species are selected to be able to tolerate that, but also to help to dry those areas out over time as well.
Thank you. That's helpful.
I ask Mr. Corner a question as well. I know it's been indicated in the material we got from the university that the university's increased the number of trees from the original submission. is that in the plans now, or is that going to be put into the plans?
We're going to update the plans to show that.
Okay, and Jim, have you seen the information on that?
Yes.
I saw the presentation today. I've not seen a revised plan at this point, and I expect that that will be included when they incorporate those site triangles that I was requesting.
Okay, and then they'll be subject to your review, I guess.
Yeah.
Or review of the landscape subcommittee. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Christopher.
Were there other issues raised by the Environmental Commission that you are not able to accommodate or that were
Yes.
rejected?
Let me address the carbon cure or the low carbon concrete. We are investigating the use of carbon cure and low carbon concrete in the region by working with the construction manager for the project also, and through that construction manager working with local concrete suppliers and precast concrete manufacturers. Both ready mix and precast elements for the garage might be able to use this technology. However, the technology is still in a pilot stage and therefore subject to ongoing engineering review. We hope as a university through all of our projects to be able to push the industry in the region to pursue carbon reducing technologies because we have that kind of buying power because of the scope of work that we do, but they're not there yet. And so this is a commitment, a commitment that we'd like to be able to be successful on, but we can't say that we're going to use it right now because the industry is not ready to use it. But we can be an influence in getting the industry in a position to use these technologies.
Thank you. Anything else related to PEs, to the environmental?
There was a question about habitat integrity. I think the PEC report might have misstated the amount of additional traffic. The increase is 2 additional cars per minute in the morning and afternoon peak hours. I think that part was not captured in the PEC report. I think the report might have implied that it was throughout the day. And so the question then was, what's the result of that? Under the assumption that it was throughout the day, what might be the result of that on habitat integrity? Since it's only in the peak hours in the morning and the evening, we think that it's not a significant impact or change on the habitat, and it's also not exactly certain how this could impact the wildlife. But as Jim Corner said, we are increasing the biodiversity by the increased planting and the diversity of mix of species around the garage. And the addition of native trees, shrubs, grass plantings will provide a more robust habitat for wildlife and extend the woodland area along Lake Carnegie further into the campus more than it does today. So we think that we are heading in that direction, but it's not measurable. And also the assumptions were not quite accurate in the PEC report.
Okay.
What about, I guess, the use of synthetic fertilizers and chemical herbicides?
We are planning to employ mechanical, physical, and biological controls with selective use of low impact and non-low impact pesticides where deemed necessary. So we are committed to it as much as possible. We can't, we're not going to be able to completely eliminate it.
And finally, in terms of the lumber used and the
yes,
demolition,
wherever applicable, we will use FSC label certified lumber for the wood pieces.
Great, thank you.
Okay, are there questions from members of the board? Mr. Quinn.
Thank you. Thanks to the university for another impressive presentation. I'm going to ask about the circulation piece. Thank you to Ms. Balgowan for arranging a review of the circulation on the site. After a year, I'd like to make approval conditioned upon said review being done before the planning board so that the public can have an opportunity to be heard rather than just a meeting of the professionals. My concerns are about someone who lives on the east side of town and has been there for a long time and has attended sporting events both here and elsewhere, has to do with the high volume sporting events that, so the Yale and Penn football games, the Penn basketball games, this is where we see significant impact on the surrounding streets. So I would suggest that many times sports fans are reluctant to park in a garage if they have an opportunity to park on a street. And I know that this falls outside of the scope of this board, other than to make a recommendation to council with Council President Cohen and Councilwoman Sachs here. The surrounding streets, and I'm talking about Aiken, Patton, Murray, and Princeton Avenue, many of them have 2-hour parking limits that are Monday through Friday. I would suggest that the neighbors would appreciate if those were extended to Saturdays during big events at the university, because there is a significant impact on the neighborhood. So I know that the university does invest in people to do circulation during these events, but to the extent that they have any control over where sports fans are going to park on game day, if they could encourage or incentivize garage use over fans looking for street alternatives. And also I'd like to repeat that I think it would be great if the 1-year review could be done before this board and the public. That's all I have for now.
Thank you. Other questions from board members? Mr. Cohen.
I just had a quick question for Mr. McCoy. Going back pretty early in the presentation, you talked about the greater floor-to-floor height for the ground floor level of the garage, but I didn't really understand the explanation for why that was going to be a positive for the university. Could you sort of go over that again for me?
I'm going to ask Kim to, if she can talk a little bit about what are some of the advantages to operating the garage with that extra floor-to-floor height at the ground level.
Thanks, Ron. So one of the major advantages is the ability to get larger vehicles into the garage, especially for events that may happen, because again, the garage is mostly for commuters and we know how to handle that, but for sporting events, we also sometimes get larger vehicles. So the height of the floor is really important to us. Another reason why the first floor height is a higher elevation is if there ever becomes a time that, you know, we need to look at possibly retrofitting the garage, having that first floor higher will enable us to be able to do that in the future.
To put like office space in that bay.
I had that same question. I'm glad it was asked. Any other questions from board members before we open it up to the public? Okay, so we'll start the public comment portion of the meeting for this application. If you are a member of the public and would like to speak or pose questions, and can hopefully make it 3 minutes or less, please raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And Mr. Cohen will make you a meeting participant in the order in which you raise your hands. So And then before you speak, Mr. Muller will swear you in. Mr. Cohen, are people lining up?
Yeah, we have a couple hands up so far. The first one is Helen Nissenbaum. I'm moving her over now. I'm not sure.
I'm here.
Oh, good.
Ah, there you
Welcome.
are. Welcome, Ms. Nissenbaum. Mr. Muller will swear you in.
If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirm. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Helen Nissenbaum, N for Nancy, Issenbaum.
Thank you.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. My name is Helen Nissenbaum. My husband, Peter Sarnak, and I have lived at 214 Western Way for over 25 years. So we're among the near neighbors of this East Campus construction. And we're joined in this submission by Bernard and Celia Chazelle, who live in 128 Broadmead. Now, I have to apologize. I didn't know about the 3-minute rule, but I'm hoping you'll forgive me. I did submit a 3-page letter, but I've tried to condense it as much as possible. We're submitting this comment in connection with the 2 notices regarding Princeton University's East Campus construction project. Now, I should say that our homes are approximately 1.5 blocks from this construction site. From time to time, we've been receiving pamphlets from the university with mock-up diagrams and artist renderings of the various buildings that are part of this project. And of course, we all saw them tonight with these beautiful slides that Mr. McCoy presented. These pamphlets talk about building aesthetics, improved roadways and landscaping, but nowhere do they reveal the major impact this project will have and already has had on the neighborhood quality of life due to the unbearable noise pollution. In the present, what we're suffering, in the near-term future, and for decades more once the power plant is settled in its place. Now, it's really interesting to me that we've talked about stormwater and appearance and landscaping, and it's fabulous to have environmental concerns taken into consideration, but there's been no discussion of noise pollution, which is currently recognized as a form of environmental pollution. I can say that for the past 5 months, we've experienced first 11 hours of operation of large trucks, excavation, and daily explosions that rattle the windows in our homes. Second, the whining and reverberation of powerful machine drilling, I understand they're now called bore wells, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. 5 days per week. We understand that the drilling is in preparation for the power plant, nicely called Tiger Energy Facility, but you know, this is a power plant that will be installed in our neighborhood, less than 1 block from some of our neighbors and approximately 1 block from our home. We've spent 5 months reaching out to the university, explaining how this noise affects the enjoyment of our homes. And during COVID times, we're doubly affected because we're sheltering in place and we're working from home. And it means we cannot escape from this din. We cannot keep our windows open during the day. We do not enjoy walks, and we avoid certain rooms in our houses where, for whatever scientific reasons, the drilling, the drumming, the reverberation, and nonstop whining is worst. Princeton is a peaceful town. It's not silent. We're accustomed to the mowers and the trimmers and the hand saws and the blowers and the barking dogs and the occasional home maintenance. But these noises don't bother us because they go on for a while and they stop. The drilling and construction noise continue with no rest for 10 to 11 hours per day, 5 days a week. No wonder the World Health Organization has defined noise torture and noise pollution in terms not only of decibels, but also in terms of incessancy and the characteristics of that noise. There are psychoacousticians who study not the decibel counts like a sound engineer, but they study the impact of sound on humans, on the well-being, both physical and mental, and things such as sleep disturbance, anxiety, depression, and so forth. We're filing this objection to the planning board because for the past 5 months, the university hasn't respected the complaints and concerns of nearby neighbors, and we're suffering the brunt of these projects, and we don't trust the university at this point going forward. I should say that some mitigations have taken place, like sound blankets. They've reduced the decibel counts a little bit, but really negligible for the experience. Now, a report that the university itself commissioned about the projected acoustical impact of the power plant it plans to install in our neighborhood cites Princeton's own noise code, section 21.1. It shall be unlawful for any person to make, continue, or cause to be made any loud, continuous, or excessive noise, or any noise which endangers the health, safety, or welfare of the community, or which a noise disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of others within Princeton. Now, the university and the acoustical report would like to reject this standard. They say it's too vague, and they want the planning board and the town to consider only the New Jersey state decibel limits. We disagree. What matters is not decibels, it's the impact on health, safety, or welfare, and on quality of life. The Princeton Code recognizes that the level, characteristic, time, and continuity of noise are all factors in how annoying and disturbing and how much it threatens the comfort, repose, health, and peaceful existence of neighbors. We can introduce you to at least 8 households in the close vicinity who are downcast about the impact on use and enjoyment of their homes and the surroundings. Now, we understand that when a construction project requests variances, it's requesting permission to build in ways that are not normally allowed. As neighbors, we're expressing our objection. The university has not shown itself to be a good neighbor. Based on our experiences these past 5 months, we have no trust that they've done due diligence on the traffic patterns from the garage and the new stadium, and we're worried that it's going to throw lots more traffic onto our streets. Now, we understand that the construction project must happen and cannot be stopped entirely, but the university has options that would make a significant difference to us in our neighborhood. For example, it could reduce the number of grills operating simultaneously down to 1 to lessen the noise concentration. It could move the power plant further away from residential housing. It could require construction equipment to use white noise signals per in the United Kingdom. It could invest in realistic top-of-the-line noise mitigation efforts. It could include close neighborhood stakeholders in the decision-making process, not merely inform us after the fact. So we're requesting an immediate moratorium on all current and future construction until 1, the city has carried out a thorough investigation of impacts of construction on the nearby neighbors. The university acknowledges and takes full responsibility for considerable negative impact this construction project has on the quality of life, welfare, and repose of the neighbors, and steps be taken to properly acknowledge the psychological impact of the noise pollution, a well-recognized environmental hazard. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Nissenbaum. Mr. DeGrazia, would you like to respond, or Mr. McCoy? I think these, noise issues are clearly having a major impact, and I want to hear what the university has to say and whether or not there's an end in sight to the worst of the noise that might be related to drilling for the underground system.
Yes, so I think we could, we could see if we have somebody here from on the construction side to address that. This particular project, does not have those factors other than the typical construction noise. We've had a number of meetings with the neighborhood during all aspects of the construction, and also to share with them the projects as they unfold. For example, tonight's slides, many of them or a version of the slides were shared with the neighborhoods early on. We try to address the issues that come up periodically. There were some initial noise concerns with the drilling. We had teams go out there, consultants, hired to look at that. There was, I think, even the person speaking referenced the blankets that were used. I don't know the stage that it's in, and maybe there's somebody on our team that could talk about that. But the drilling initially is being done on grade. There's going to be area excavated where the soccer stadium is, and the drilling will be done, 10 feet lower, so that should help substantially with the noise. I don't know where we are in the sequence right now, but I know just from talking through certain meetings that it's something that the university has been taking a very hard look at. Do we have?
May I just quickly respond there, because the one thing I didn't include in my letter, in reading my letter, is that I looked over my email, about 70 emails circulating between the neighbors, and it's me and Bernard Chazelle and Celia Chazelle, plus other neighbors in the neighborhood, with Steve Hancock and Kristen Applegate. And so we're quite well aware of the different phases of the project. We were told that things would get better when it would move down grade, but it has not. We were told that sound experts, acoustical experts were brought in, and that these blankets would make a difference. They have not. And we know that more drilling is taking place in preparation for the power plant in February. So this thing is going on for a long time. And once the power plant starts working, it's going to be 24/7 with sound that's much worse than the noise that we have today, because the report itself says it's going to be like helicopters overhead. So that is what we have looking forward to, not only a few months, not only a few years, but for the rest of our existence in this neighborhood.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but is there anyone from the construction side or someone that can speak to a longer time frame?
So there's a couple different aspects. I know that there was blasting on site. I believe that work ends tomorrow, so that's no longer happening. We've been taking noise readings around the site regularly. Those readings, and we're going to be sharing those readings with the municipal engineer. Also, this is not a project that's talking about a power plant or having a power plant. Tonight, we're talking about a garage, and there's no aspect of the garage other than a backup generator that has sound generating from it. We've provided some information on that and the decibel level. So tonight's hearing really is about a site plan for the garage. I can't really address some of those future concerns because that will be addressed at the time. We'll have a noise consultant that can go through and address future projects that are proposed. Again, that's not before this board tonight. Eventually, it'll come in as a site plan, and we could address issues related to sound at that time.
Well, the questions that she raised were well beyond the power plant, and I know that we can't, spend all night on this in particular, but I'm wondering if perhaps there's somebody with the engineer's office. Have we looked into?
Louise, can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
Because we actually had a conversation about this morning at the Ordinance Harmonization Committee's meeting. And we have a new environmental inspector that's been hired by the municipality. I believe they're with the health department, and we thought that that individual would be best suited to be dealing with these issues, basically enforcing the environmental regulations, which include the regulations about noise. So I think that that's an important first step, is to make sure that that individual is brought in to sort of advocate on behalf of the neighbors with the university and really negotiate a resolution that is compliant with our ordinance.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
And just to be clear too, we believe that we are in full compliance with the resolution, with the ordinance and with any regulations regarding noise, and that there are, we're always trying to do the best we can, but we feel that we are in compliance.
It's not what
Ms. Nissenbaum, we hear you, but and I think that what Mr. Cohen has suggested is the best we can do right now to.
Thank you. I appreciate
environmental
it.
inspector to deal with, to be in contact with you directly and try to help address some of these problems for you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I ask Ms. Nissenbaum a question?
Yes.
We have had conversations about this issue
Yes.
in the last couple of weeks, and I did ask and send you on to the health department. Were you able to get in touch with anyone there?
Yes, and I believe it's the person that
Bob English, Mr.
Yes.
English. Okay,
We
so you
did.
have communicated with Mr. English.
I have.
Okay.
And part of what I'm doing today is at his recommendation, which is to read my concerns into these meetings, and
okay,
so we can resolve without getting into court battles and so
right.
on.
Okay, let's
Thank you.
let's close this discussion here, but I'll follow up with Ms. Nissenbaum tomorrow. Make sure that
Thank you.
I have Bob English in the loop on it.
Thank you so much, Jim. Appreciate it. And thank you too, Ms. Nissenbaum. Mr. Cohen, who's next?
We have one more individual with their hand up, and I believe it's one of the Chazelles. I only see a last name, but that Ms. Nissenbaum had referred to, so we'll bring them in and we'll get them sworn in.
Okay.
Should I exit?
I will transfer you back over to
Okay.
attendee status.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
I'm Bernard Chazelle, Chazelle. This won't take long. I just want to echo my neighbor's comments. Helen has made this very well. I just want to say one thing, which is that we've been working on this for 5 months already, and the university has not taken this problem seriously. And to some extent, Mr. DeGrazia's comments are very indicative of the fact that this major issue, which goes with the growing rebellion in the entire neighborhood, okay, with people talking about moving out of the place, maybe even leaving Princeton University, has been met with the very kind help of people like Christine Applegate, but who can only do so much within their capacities. So I really, really urge the planning board to make sure that the university from now on address the noise mitigation issue much more seriously than what they have done so far. That's it. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chazelle.
Thank you.
Mr. Cohen, are there any other?
No more hands.
Okay. I will then close the public portion of the meeting for this application. let's see, are there other questions from board members? I did want to, if I don't see any, I did want to go over the SPRAB memo, and I realized that the university's response to the committee memos probably addressed these, but if we could just, if you could let us know whether there are any recommendations from the site plan review advisory board that you cannot accommodate or refuse to accommodate. I would like to know what, we would like to know what those are.
Okay, thank you. So on the SPRAB report, the first recommendation has to do with possibly restriping parking spaces with larger sizes. We provided testimony that we believe that this industry standard and the same size that is in our other lots works. So we're requesting a variance for that. And we're prepared to monitor the use of the garage by larger vehicles. But at this point, we're proposing the width as shown on the plans. Recommendation 2 and 3 really are just comments, and we've addressed them. Recommendation 4, to the extent it's looking at a pedestrian activated light at this time, it's not something we've planned. However, what we are going to do and what we're going to continue to do is to review the design of the pedestrian vehicle visibility and look for ways to improve the sight lines. We will look and monitor that as Ivy Lane and Western Lane essentially becomes a new type of road, because that's going to be redesigned as part of the ES&Cs, which we're going to hopefully get into next. Lastly would be recommendation 5 was fine. Recommendation 6 had a question about exterior beams. They're not the beams, but they're an architectural element, and we have to install them as a single piece. So it might have been something the way that it was shown in the rendition, but essentially we're proposing it, and it can't be done separately as
Christopher, can I just elaborate on that last one? Since you're an attorney and not an architect.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just reading the
that is an element that provides the kind of structural expression of this garage as we showed in the renderings. It's a small vertical joint, and the vertical joint is a construction joint that needs to be there. We cannot eliminate it the way SPRAB wanted us to eliminate it, because to eliminate it would result in having to specify an extra long piece of concrete that would break if we hoisted it into construction. So it's a vertical joint that needs to be there, and we cannot hoist the concrete as a single piece of concrete without that joint. It's a 1-inch wide joint. It's pretty subtle, but it's good that SPRAB is paying attention to subtleties.
That's why we pay them the big bucks. Okay, and then their last comment was about wayfinding signage, and
we spoke about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I have a question about lights, and I was struck by the description of the tower as a beacon, and I understand what you're getting at. I just want to understand better how much dimmer, I mean, how dim they'll become, for example, overnight, and a little bit more about the time that elapses between when the garage has been used and the lights begin to dim. You know, that kind of thing, because I'm a little concerned that it'll be a beacon from, you know, Route 1 or outer space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
if I
so
can,
I think I may have used the word lantern, but not beacon.
Somebody said beacon, but yes, I heard lantern also. That sounded better.
Yeah. Well, just to answer, the question, we do talk about being able to wayfind and being able to find, quickly from places around campus, be able to identify, your way to your car and off campus. But, given the sight lines, and we can show those. I don't have those handy, but we could talk about the fact that this space will, when it's occupied, be at a certain level, but then be less than half. And we have dimming controls on this building, and we can certainly dial back what the nighttime setting is. I mean, there's a certain amount of light you need in a stairwell at all times. But I think what's important to understand is that the thing that's most often glary or troublesome to see in a parking garage is when you see those sort of wraparound, very direct fixtures that are sort of industrial in nature and quite inexpensive. In this case, you're really just seeing mostly the light reflecting off of surfaces. And so while it does provide a certain sense of brightness, it's not that objectionable sort of bright points of light that you can sometimes see coming out of parking garages.
Will the lantern be lit all night, 24/7?
It's a stairwell. So it's, it's not a lantern just for being.
I'm sorry, I'm using your metaphor. So.
let me
Sure.
jump in here. It is, I think I'm the one who's guilty of using the word beacon, but I also said a bit of a beacon. I think that we are more than happy to work with staff to make sure that we achieve a level here to that it just wants to be apparent against the context. It does not want to be a bright, shining, light. So, and it will be lit 24/7 because it is also a safety feature. When people are returning back to the garage using the stairs or the elevators, we want the space to be already illuminated before they arrive. So, but we're more than happy. This does not need to be particularly bright. We can't quantify it here in this meeting, but I think your concern is a really good one, and it should be, just enough to do the job and not more than that.
And there will be controls that will allow us to tune that space.
Thank you. Will the parking decks themselves also be lit 24/7, or will there be some kind of motion activation where someone walking out of the stairway will activate low light if it's nighttime?
Yes, it'll be motion activated like we have on the West Campus garage right now. I do not know the foot candles of the low mode, but it's a very low foot candle load when it's in the low mode, and then the motion sensor will illuminate the lights and then go off.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just comment as well, Louise. We were also looking at lighting requirements in the zoning harmonization meeting this morning, and we actually have requirements for minimum required lighting levels in parking garages when they're in use. So, and basically if this garage is open and accessible to people who need to use it 24 hours a day, I think there would have to be some level of illumination under our code at all times.
And does the code allow for motion activation in areas like, so that you can illuminate one level of a deck and not all 6 levels if there's activity, after midnight or something like that?
There is mention of motion detector activation, but I can't recall if it was specifically for parking garages or for other types of uses. I can check it out and get back to you on it.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be hypersensitive to it. There is a parking garage not far from where I live that at night is lit in a way that's just just so above and beyond what seems to be needed that it's something that's been noticed, and, you know, so maybe that's a separate issue that needs to be dealt with, but it made me sensitive to this too, since it's going to be such a big structure.
Right.
Are there other questions from the board? Seeing none, are we, maybe Mr. Mueller, ready to go over conditions before we consider a motion?
Yeah, I could run through the reports. In terms of the conditions, I think the university has agreed to a lot of them. They've articulated ones they haven't agreed to. And certainly Exhibit A2 provides a lot of guidance on what they're willing to do and not willing to do. As I understand it, in terms of the report from Jim and Derek, well, okay, obviously there's preliminary and final major site plan approval and the one variance where the parking stalls are required to be 9 foot wide by 19 foot long, and they're proposing 8.5 foot wide by 18 feet. And I'll just go through Jim and Derek's report now, as I said. The applicant has included a table of bulk regulations on the site, but the data in the table is associated with the regulations of the former borough. The table must be revised to reflect the bulk regulations of the former township. Then the landscape and traffic controls plans must be coordinated to ensure that adequate site distance is provided and maintained at driveway and roadway intersections. Stormwater report must be resubmitted with computations that are in compliance with the Princeton Land Use Code and in response to the comments in the SWM consulting report. Clear site triangles must be provided at driveway and roadway intersections and indicated on the plans. The landscaping and traffic control plans must be coordinated to ensure that adequate site distance will be maintained. I got to check whether that's a repeat of something he already said. The applicant must resubmit the traffic report with all documentation required and respond to all comments noted in the municipality's traffic consultant's report. Given the modifications to traffic signals on the county and state DOT jurisdiction are being proposed, the applicant must provide evidence that those modifications have been approved. My understanding is they have not been approved yet, but they will submit it when they are approved. Then a stop sign R1-1 must be installed at the intersection of Stadium Drive and Western Way /Ivy Lane instead of the W11-2 and W16-7PL. This intersection is a stop control intersection and not a mid-block crossing. The proposed crosswalk along Fitzrandolph Road does not connect to a pedestrian facility on east side and should be removed. Staff notes that this crosswalk will connect to a pedestrian facility to be constructed in conjunction with Tiger and Athletic Operations Facility, and that the applicant should address the sequence of construction to identify which project the crosswalk should be installed. And at least my understanding of the testimony is they're not at the point where they could identify that. Is that fair to say, Christopher?
That's the crosswalk. That was something we said that essentially in the engineering report and the zoning report, we agreed to all of the conditions and we believe that we can meet them. I think with the crosswalks where they led to areas that weren't developed yet, we would sit down with staff and determine the correct timing. But in terms of the engineering and zoning report, I could say that we meet all or agree to meet all of the conditions. The only exceptions were section 4.0B landscape, where we talked about the tree of heaven, but it seems like Jim changed his opinion on that and we were able to leave them, I guess, with some sort of special care needed, and we can work through that and address that.
I thought Jim's testimony, and Jim, jump in, was that the arborist was going to work with the landscape services at the university to address this question.
Yes,
Yeah.
the arborist is working, and that's a campus-wide issue.
Yeah.
The spotted lanternfly has become a nuisance, and And part of the controls is to try to eliminate as many of these trees as possible. Their explanation regarding why they're not removing the tree is acceptable to me. It is a rather large tree, and it does create, it would create a void, and it would be difficult to remove. So
Okay.
I have no objection to their response.
Okay. Then the applicant is proposing 21 accessible parking spaces, 5 of which are van accessible. ADA standards require 20 spaces for the first 1,001 spaces and 1 space for every 100 additional spaces, a fraction thereof above 1,000. They'll need to provide 26 ADA spaces, 21 standard and 5 van accessible. The applicant must respond to all of the other comments in the traffic consultant's report. Then there's a sewer connection fee set forth. Applicant must submit a noise analysis for the operation of the emergency generator to demonstrate that it is complying. Then the plat, the subdivision plat, which was prepared in 2013, indicates the boundary dimensions and bearings are listed in tabular form by alphanumeric reference, but the listing is not provided. The applicant must submit a survey of the property showing the bearings and distance of the boundary and showing the required yard setbacks. But then a bond estimate has to be submitted, and a performance bond guarantee agreement must be entered into for a term of 1 year from the posting of the performance guarantee. Then required approvals from the Mercer County Planning Board, Mercer County Soil Conservation Service, Delaware Road and Canal Commission, Princeton Sewer Operating Committee, NJDOT. And that's that on Jim's report. And over Milsky's report. Okay, obviously they're going to provide a new landscape plan which shows the enhanced landscaping. And then I think with respect to the SWM consulting report and the McMahon report, I'm not going to go through those because those have already been incorporated by reference through Jim's report, unless you want me to, Louise.
No, I don't think you need to. I think those issues were addressed as I understand it. Yeah.
Then the Environmental Commission. So looking at the executive summary and what the university's response.
The one issue that I see there that we didn't quite nail down, it has to do with the gold level Park Smart certification. And I believe it was testified that the university is tracking toward achieving that level. And I'm wondering if the university is willing to commit to that, or whether you can say.
We can't commit to getting any specific one because it's a third party, not even a governmental agency that classifies these. So we can't guarantee any certification. What we can tell you is that we are currently tracking for gold, and that's what we want. We're going to do everything we can to get it, but we can't guarantee it. We can't have it as a condition that we have to have it because it's out of our control.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll leave it as tracking. And basically a good faith effort to secure it if they can. Then the system for removing stormwater runoff, non-point source pollution from the garage decks should be detailed. In fact, they do that in Exhibit A2. The university should present the planning board with a timeline for completing a power purchase agreement for the installation of the solar array. But if I understood Mr. McCoy's testimony, I don't think they were in a position to do that, but maybe Ron, you can jump in.
Well, again, it's negotiating with a third party, and
Right.
we have no way of guaranteeing how well they can perform in negotiations. They're complicated.
Right. Okay, so that's not one you're willing to agree to.
You know, ultimately the goal is to have it. It's an important part of the university's, plan to meet their sustainability goals. So it's something that they really want to have. The project can't be held up for it because the timing of the garage is very important.
Yeah. Why don't we leave the condition as the university will pursue that, the power agreement, the power purchase agreement.
Yeah, so that's why we set it up as a, a future, because that's how we kind of go through the solar, where right now we're looking at 5 projects in Princeton, and this will be probably the second round because it's a very nice place to put it. We've identified it.
Okay, and would you have a problem with the condition that says that Princeton University will pursue the power purchase agreement?
I don't think, I guess, Ron, how is that language for you?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, and then also the PEC recommends integration of solar power into the building's renewable energy sources. There's been testimony on that. I'll draft a condition reflecting that the structure will be set up so that the solar arrays can be added at some subsequent time, and that you'll have all the EV charging stations, et cetera.
So one thing that we kind of didn't talk about earlier was the DC fast charger. I know that those are much more complicated to install, but I just was curious what the university had to say about that.
I have to get back to my notes on that one, sorry. Unless Ben can jump in real quick.
You like me to?
Sure.
So we have level 2 chargers that
Excuse me, Mr. Patrick, have you been sworn in?
with the group I did earlier.
Okay, go ahead.
He's a licensed architect in the university's office.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with the Office of University Architect. So yeah, we are using level 2 chargers throughout the garage. And actually what we're doing is we're setting it up to be able to charge 32 cars, but give access to 64 cars at one point in time. So with dual-headed chargers. So what we're doing is providing more access for cars to charge in the garage at one point in time during the day. So people do not need to move their car to allow room for other people to come and charge. That's a problem that we deal with now in the university, because people come during a non-pandemic time, they come for the day. So this will allow people to come, park their car, multiple people plug into the charger and actually give access to 64 cars at once. So we are using a level 2 charger, which is a faster charge than the level 1s. I think that.
Can I get into that? So again, there is no real benefit to the fast charger in this garage, since this is a faculty staff commuter garage, and most cars will be parked for a large portion of the day. I mean, we can look into it, but it doesn't have a clear advantage in this particular location.
Yeah, I think that the idea behind it was really to offer the ability to charge up really quickly. So it wouldn't be, something that there would be a lot of, but there might be one available for those that could, really juice up their battery, very quickly. Yeah.
Okay, just continuing with the PEC report under transportation, they talk about a generous number of parking spaces reserved for carpooling. Vehicles are provided. This feature should be promoted to staff, faculty, and students. Any problem with just putting that in about promoting it to faculty, staff, and students?
Kim, I defer to you on that.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that.
One of the provisions in the PEC report says a generous number of parking spaces reserved for carpooling vehicles are provided. This feature should be promoted to staff, faculty, and students. I was going to add as a condition that this should be promoted to faculty, staff, and students.
They are promoted to faculty, staff, and students already.
Okay, so you don't think, so it's not, the university doesn't think that's necessary.
No, it's part of our program. It's part of our existing RYR program, so we will sign those spaces.
Okay, that's fine. And also the PEC encourages financial incentives for ride-sharing patrons.
And we have incentives, again, for our Revise Your Ride programs, both carpool and vanpool.
Okay, So I don't think we need to get into that. Then there's a discussion about the technology of basically injecting CO2 into concrete. And Mr. McCoy has explained that that's really kind of cutting edge, and they're looking at it seriously, but it's not something they can commit themselves to now. Is that,
The industry
is
is
that
not,
accurate, Ron?
the industry, correct. The industry is not there yet.
Okay. Then maintenance, and they wanted a green cleaning and maintenance practices. Obviously, in A2, you've responded to that as how you're going to take care of that cleaning, and I'll incorporate that as a condition. And Ron, do you want to describe that at all? What the cleaning protocol is, or maybe Kim can.
So the protocol is we will bring in a vehicle that will clean the garage and self-contain any water runoff, et cetera. They'll use green products on the concrete, so there shouldn't be any spillage into the rest of the roadways.
Okay, so we'll make that a condition. And then
That's once per year. Let me just.
Yes, right. The solar array, we've talked about that. It's going to be set up so that one could be added later on. It's not going to be not now. Let me just make a note. Okay, fast charging, we're not going to do that. You talked about, I think it was Ron, you talked about the method of handling, dealing with trying to avoid using synthetic pesticides and fertilizers and other techniques. But I don't think we need to put that in. Does anybody think we need to put that in? They're already doing it.
Well, the
Go ahead.
university have, you know, a landscaping protocol that calls for either organic or integrated pest management or something that absolutely minimizes the use of pesticide, herbicide, and fungicide, that kind of thing. I saw somebody nodding.
Yeah, and there was testimony on that, and that is also in A2. And we could put that in as a condition just to reflect what they're doing.
Right.
The
A2
university,
is the best.
Go ahead, Ron.
No, I was just going to say A2 is the best text on that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an excerpt from the university's integrated pest management control.
Okay.
So there is a full system.
Great.
Can someone please send me A2? I don't know if that's Carrie or somebody from the planning board.
Carrie sent it out during the.
Okay.
Okay, then the PEC also recommending using FSC labeled lumber. The university agreed to do that. Basically, when applicable, I wasn't quite sure what that meant, Ron.
Well, we are using it for site furniture and for the wood soffits.
Okay, hold on.
Are you using it for the wood surface underneath the stairways?
Yes.
Okay.
Demolition materials should be recycled whenever possible, and university has a protocol for that. Do we want to put that as a condition?
What was the question? I didn't.
The university, the PEC recommendation is demolition materials should be recycled whenever possible. There's already a township ordinance on that, a Princeton ordinance on that, with a minimum of 50% per Princeton's waste ordinance. And the university has already committed itself to do that. We can make that a condition if you would like. Is that the pleasure of the board? Sounds
Yes.
Like, okay. Using green building and locally sourced materials whenever possible. The university has already committed to that. We'll make that a condition. And then signage, and that will be a separate submission. Let me go through the SPRAB report. Now one of the recommendations is safety concerns were expressed about traffic exiting the garage after athletic events. The university was going to coordinate with their safety department, the Princeton Police, an outside vendor. We could put that in. I don't think we need to as a condition.
I agree.
Okay. And then with respect to the number 4 of the SPRAB recommendations, which a pedestrian activated light or flashing beacon could be considered at the Fitzrandolph Road crosswalk at Jadwin Drive. The university in their A2
Page 13 of our response, number 4.
Yeah, and
And we'll look at the design and the pedestrian vehicle visibility and ways to improve their sight lines.
Yep.
Also taking into consideration the future design and operating speeds of Ivy Lane and Western Way.
Exactly. So I would put that in as a condition. And I think I already said that the stormwater report will be updated and resubmitted, but that'll be conditioned anyway. I think I reviewed that when I was reviewing Jim and Derek's memo.
I'm sorry, Jerry, did that require a flashing beacon?
It did, but we're not, instead of that,
Okay.
we're going to use your response, which was what
Okay.
Yeah,
what
I just said, Ron.
Okay, got it.
I think you mean a flashing lantern, not a beacon, right? Sorry, couldn't resist.
And then wayfinding signage, but that's going to be submitted later on. Let me just thumb through my notes and see if there's anything additional. Oh, okay.
Quinn's,
Whoops. Okay.
Mr. Quinn's condition about,
Yep, right.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, there is already an agreement that the traffic is going to be reviewed after a year. Tim wants it, the review to be before the planning board.
Correct.
Okay.
So how about, I was thinking about it. Princeton University does a parking study and reports in the public the results of that study. In the year that we do the monitoring testing, why don't we set that up as the avenue to provide that information to the public, because it's sort of related and we can provide it at that time.
Okay. So
Mr.
this would be,
Quinn?
As long as it's in a public forum where citizens are able to comment and ask questions, I would have no objection. I know the university did do an annual review either before council or the planning board on its transportation and circulation system, and that didn't happen obviously this year, I'm guessing, because of COVID. But
yeah, that's what I'm.
And that's what you're proposing.
Yeah,
I thought it was an annual review, and you referred to it as an every other year review, semi-annual review.
semi-annual will be traffic.
Kim, can you address that? Because you're more familiar than I am.
So we always submit an annual review,
Okay.
transportation
Great.
and TDM measures.
Great. I would have no objection to that being folded into that meeting as long as there's notification and those who wish to comment can.
Okay, hold on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the university will work with staff with respect to the level of lighting in the garage.
Yes.
We talked about the arborist working with the university landscaping department with respect to the tree of heaven. I must say I have a daughter who lives on the main line where they're having a real problem with these lanternflies, and it's when they get into the infestation, which could be very significant.
Disgusting.
It's really pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. The revised plans will include more trees, subject to the landscape subcommittee approval, and it'll also include side triangles. And that's it.
And with regard to that one, we would like the the ability to kind of move forward with the landscaping subcommittee approval, not a condition of the plan being signed, but sort of after, sort of how we set it up with residential colleges.
Okay, so wouldn't that be a precondition?
Exactly. So it wouldn't prevent us. Right now, there's construction on site with geothermal wells. We don't want to wait and have a gap because of something like that. We want to be able to move forward and then address that. And that's always the last stage anyway, the landscaping and planting. Along with that, we are going to request the ability to do any early start work if something apparently needs to be done, and that is always requested and done through the engineer's office. So as part of our application this evening, we just want to ask for the ability to do that if the need arises.
So repeat that again.
Oh, early start work? We
early
did
start.
that for residential colleges was the last application.
Yeah.
Because again, we have construction work going on. There may be a couple of little items we would like the flexibility to talk to the engineering department with to see if it would help to keep the sequence moving along.
Early start work if approved by the land use engineer.
Thank you.
So that's it, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, with
I do have one question.
Yeah, one more.
Jerry, early on, you mentioned a noise consultant for the garage power generator.
That they have to submit a noise analysis with
A noise analysis. Okay, I just wanted to know, is that actually a consultant to come in and do that? No.
No, their noise, it actually is covered in A2.
Okay.
They provided me the information I was looking for.
All right, thank you very much.
So that does not have to be a condition, Jim?
No, it doesn't have to be a condition.
Okay.
Mr. Laplace?
Yeah, one more point that I don't think came up. I didn't remember seeing any details on this in the submittal. I know we mentioned that we talked about wayfinding and that signage would be more detailed in the future. It needs to be developed. Is there any interest by the university in having a building identification signage or the building name signage on the exterior of the deck, either now or in the future? And if so, will the location and sort of design guidelines for that be included in wayfinding and signage information?
Yes, it's our intent to name the parking structure and to put the name on the facade, and yeah, that's part of it. That's part of our planning for sure.
Okay, because I didn't recall seeing any details about that.
No, we don't have it. It'll all be part of the package of signage for the project.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anything else? Having gone over all those conditions, we'll entertain a motion to approve this application. Anybody want to move that? Ms. Sachs?
I move to
is
approve.
moving.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Oakman seconds. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay. Well,
Jerry, we don't need to do a roll call on that?
oh,
No,
I'm sorry. Yes, that probably,
Okay.
sorry
Thanks.
about that. Carrie, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Capizoli?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Oakman?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Mr. Texarney?
Yes.
And Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, it's 11:01, and I'm sorry that we haven't yet seen the concept plan for the School of Engineering and Applied Science and Environmental Studies, but
Is that something that you could talk about for 15 minutes?
Uh,
Move to adjourn.
no, I think we're done.
All right, I thought I'd ask. It's a concept, so, you know, it's not like an application we're voting on. And we
I
have,
agree, understood. And I just think that the hour is late and we shouldn't be continuing on.
Okay.
Look forward to seeing it.
Can we carry it to a date certain? Although concept does not require notice, your ordinance does. So if you could carry it, we don't have to do notice again.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would ask Carrie to maybe give us a little update on if there's an upcoming meeting that has time on the agenda.
Sure. What do you say, Carrie?
We are so busy, that's hard to say. Scheduled for the 15th, we have 2 applications. We have the synthetic turf fields and we have the signage. I mean, we might have some room on that night's agenda. And then we have the 22nd, and that's going to be the Thanet properties. We have no room on the agenda for the concept. Unless you want to fit it in, then it's going to be a 4.5, you know.
No, not the 22nd.
Why don't we?
Carrie, is the signage on the 15th, the McLaughlin?
Yes.
Yeah, that's not going to take long at all.
No.
That
And
would make sense.
if worse comes to worse and we can't get to it, we can carry it again, but I think it's very likely we'll be able to get to it.
I think so too. Let's put it on for the 15th.
Yeah, I think that'll work.
Okay.
We're talking about 2 weeks from now, October 15th?
Yes, that's correct. Is that okay with you guys?
Sure.
Always okay with me. I don't have a life.
Ditto. Okay.
Thanks very much, as always.
Yes.
I heard a motion to adjourn earlier.
I
2
so
minutes
move.
ago.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Good night.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.